You're old and useless, Mom. This house is worth more than your life.
Imagine standing at your own doorstep on Christmas Eve, fresh from 3 weeks fighting for your life in the hospital, only to hear your daughter, the child you sacrificed everything for, say coldly, "You're old and useless, Mom. This house is worth more than your life." Her smile, once your light, now a dagger to your heart, stealing your home, your wealth, your freedom. What would you do when Christmas turns into a nightmare? Tonight, one mother's story will chill you and make you question, what does family truly mean? Welcome to Voices of Auntie Rose, where stories of family, forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to rise above betrayal come to life with heart and soul. We're so glad you're here, joining a community that celebrates the unbreakable human spirit. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story. And it would be amazing if you could like this video, share it, or drop a comment letting us know what time it is and which city or country you're watching from. Your shares and comments are the greatest gift, the powerful inspiration that keeps this channel growing and spreading meaningful life lessons every single day. Now, let's dive into today's story. The cardiac monitor's steady beeping had become my Christmas carol for the past 3 weeks. Outside the window of Boston General Hospital, snow fell gently on Christmas Eve, blanketing the city in white, while I lay trapped in this sterile room, recovering from what should have been a routine heart valve replacement. At 72, I'd accepted that surgeries took longer to bounce back from, but the complications, an infection that wouldn't clear, medications that left me dizzy and confused, had stretched my stay from the expected 5 days to nearly a month. "Mrs. Sullivan, you're looking much better today," Dr. Mitchell said, reviewing my chart with that practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Your vitals are finally stable. We should be able to discharge you tomorrow, Christmas Day." "Tomorrow?" My voice cracked with emotion. "But my daughter Emily said she'd pick me up tonight. She's hosting Christmas dinner, and my granddaughter Sarah has been working on a special surprise for weeks." The doctor's expression shifted slightly, something unreadable crossing his features. "Well, Margaret, these things can't be rushed. One more night of observation won't hurt." He adjusted my IV drip, and within minutes, that familiar fog descended over my thoughts again. Through the haze, I clutched the small gift bag beside my bed, a vintage music box I'd found months ago at an estate sale, carefully restored for Sarah. It played Silent Night, just like the one my late husband Thomas had given me 45 years ago on our first Christmas together. The parallel wasn't lost on me. I wanted Sarah to have something that would last, something that would remind her of family traditions long after I was gone. By 8 o'clock that evening, the medications had worn off enough for clarity to return. The halls were quiet, most staff home with their families. I made a decision that perhaps saved me from something far worse than a lonely hospital Christmas. I would discharge myself against medical advice and surprise my family. The taxi ride through Beacon Hill cost $70. Highway robbery even for Christmas Eve, but I didn't care. Our Victorian row house, built in 1892 and passed down through Thomas's family for generations, looked magical under its blanket of snow. The windows glowed warmly, and I could see the shadow of our 12-foot Fraser fir in the front parlor. My heart swelled with anticipation. I paid the driver and struggled up the icy front steps, my legs still weak, one hand gripping the iron railing while the other clutched Sarah's gift. The brass doorknob, original to the house, wouldn't turn. Locked. Strange, since Emily knew I was coming home tonight. I rang the doorbell, its familiar Westminster chime echoing through the house. The door opened, but instead of Emily's welcoming smile, I faced David Coleman, my son-in-law, blocking the entrance like a bouncer at some exclusive club. Behind him, I glimpsed Emily on the stairs, her face pale, eyes avoiding mine. "Margaret," David said, his voice cold enough to freeze the falling snow. "What are you doing here?" "What do you mean, what am I doing here?" I tried to step forward, but he didn't budge. "This is my home. I'm here for Christmas with my family." "You were supposed to stay in the hospital until after the holidays," he said, his tone sharp with accusation. "Dr. Mitchell said you weren't ready." I discharged myself. "Now please, David, it's freezing, let me in." That's when Emily finally descended the stairs, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood I'd restored by hand after Thomas died. She wore the pearl necklace I'd given her for her 40th birthday, but her expression was that of a stranger. "Mother," she said, and the formal address hit me like a slap. She hadn't called me mother since she was an angry teenager. "Things have changed while you were in the hospital. This house, it's no longer yours." The words didn't make sense. I actually laughed, thinking this was some twisted joke. "Emily, sweetheart, what are you talking about?" David pulled out a manila folder from the hall table, my hall table. The Chippendale Thomas and I had bought at auction in 1985. "The papers are all legal, Margaret. You signed power of attorney before your surgery. Emily and I felt it was best to transfer the property to ensure your assets were protected and your care was managed properly." Protected from what? My voice rose, panic creeping in. "Managed by whom?" "From your declining mental state," Emily said, her words rehearsed, clinical. "You've been showing signs of confusion for months. The house is too much for you. We've made arrangements for you to move to Sunshine Manor in Framingham. They specialize in memory care." "Memory care?" I stumbled backward, my weak legs nearly giving out. "I'm not senile, Emily. I'm your mother." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," David interjected, his patience clearly wearing thin. "This is what's best for everyone." From behind them, David's parents, Robert and Patricia Coleman, emerged from my living room, holding champagne flutes. Patricia wore my mother's emerald brooch, the one I'd kept in my jewelry box upstairs. "Oh, Margaret," Patricia said with false sympathy that made my stomach turn. "We were just telling Emily how brave she's being, making these difficult decisions. The house will be in much better hands now." "You're stealing from me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My own daughter is stealing from me." Emily's face hardened. "We're protecting family assets. The house alone is worth $3 million, and your investment accounts, well, someone needs to manage them properly. You were always too conservative, too stuck in the past. Those investments are worth over $700,000, I said, my banking knowledge from years of managing the school district's budget emerging through the shock. What have you done with them?" "What we felt was best," David said dismissively. "Now, Margaret, don't make us call the police. You're trespassing." "Trespassing? In my own home?" My chest tightened, a sharp pain radiating down my left arm. "Not now," I prayed. "Not a heart attack now." Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, my 16-year-old granddaughter in her Christmas pajamas, the ones with little reindeer that I'd bought her last year. "Grandma?" she called out, confusion and fear in her voice. "Mom, why is Grandma outside?" "Go back to your room, Sarah," Emily snapped. "This doesn't concern you." "But it's Christmas Eve. Grandma's supposed to—" "Now, Sarah." My granddaughter's face crumpled, but before retreating, she looked directly at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it apology? Warning? She mouthed something I couldn't make out before disappearing down the hall. "Here's what's going to happen," Robert Coleman said, stepping forward with the authority of a man used to getting his way. "You're going to leave quietly. There's a room ready for you at Sunshine Manor. The staff is expecting you tomorrow. Your belongings, what little you'll need, will be sent along." "This is illegal," I managed to say through the crushing weight in my chest. "You can't just—" "We can and we have," Emily interrupted, her voice sharp as winter ice. "You're old, Mother. 72 and falling apart. Dad's been gone 5 years. It's time you accepted that you can't manage alone anymore." The cruelty of it, using Thomas's death against me, finally broke through my shock. Tears streamed down my face, freezing in the bitter wind still whipping through the open door. "I raised you," I whispered. "I sacrificed everything for you, worked double shifts to pay for your college, your wedding, your business startup that failed." "Ancient history," Emily cut me off, "and guilt tripping won't work anymore. You should be grateful we're not just dumping you on the street. Though technically," David added with a cruel smile, "that's exactly what we're doing right now. Merry Christmas, Margaret." The door slammed in my face. I stood there, 72 years old, 3 weeks post-surgery, holding a gift for a granddaughter I might never see again, while snow accumulated on my shoulders like a shroud. The Victorian house that had sheltered 5 generations of Sullivans loomed above me, its windows now hostile eyes, its door barred against me by my own flesh and blood. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb from cold and shock, and called the only person I could think of, Helen Morrison. my friend since college, who'd become a prosecutor and then a judge before retiring. As her phone rang, I collapsed onto the icy steps, the gift bag tumbling from my grip, the music box inside chiming a few discordant notes of Silent Night as it hit the ground. Helen's voice through the phone was my lifeline as I huddled on those frozen steps, my body convulsing with cold and betrayal. Margaret? Margaret, speak to me. Where are you? They locked me out, Helen. My own daughter. The words fractured in my throat, each syllable cutting like glass. My stomach lurched violently, and I barely managed to turn away before vomiting into the pristine snow beside the steps. 3 weeks of hospital food and medications came up, leaving me gasping and trembling. Stay right there. I'm calling 911 and coming myself. Don't move, do you hear me? But I couldn't stay. Not there. Not with the neighbors' windows beginning to light up with curiosity. Mrs. Chen from next door was already peering through her curtains. The humiliation burned worse than the cold. Using the wrought iron railing, I pulled myself up, each movement sending lightning bolts through my chest where the surgical incisions still hadn't fully healed. The vintage music box had fallen open in the snow, its delicate mechanism exposed to the elements. The tiny dancing figure, a little girl in a red Christmas dress, lay broken beside it, severed at the waist. Just like my family, I thought bitterly, broken beyond repair. I gathered the pieces with shaking hands, remembering how Sarah used to love watching my old music box dance when she was small, how she'd beg me to wind it again and again. A black Mercedes pulled up, not Helen's modest Honda, but something far more sinister. Patricia Coleman stepped out, wrapped in what I recognized as my grandmother's white mink stole, the one I'd kept preserved in cedar since 1968. Still here? Patricia's voice dripped with theatrical concern as she approached. Oh, Margaret, this is just pitiful. A woman of your age, sitting in the snow like some homeless person. What would the neighbors think? That's my grandmother's, I managed to say, pointing at the fur with a trembling finger. Was yours? Patricia corrected, adjusting the stole with deliberate cruelty. Emily thought I should have it. After all, someone should actually wear these beautiful things instead of letting them rot in storage. Your attachment to dead people's belongings is honestly quite morbid. She pulled out her phone and began recording me. This is exactly why Emily made the right decision, she narrated to the camera. Look at this confusion, this aggression, classic dementia symptoms. Stop that. I tried to stand to grab the phone, but my legs buckled. I crashed back onto the steps, my hip exploding in agony where the surgical site struck the concrete. A warm wetness spread beneath my coat. The wound had reopened. Patricia laughed, actually laughed, as she continued filming. Robert, come see this, she called toward the house. We're getting everything we need for the incompetency filing. Through my tears and pain, I saw Sarah's face appear in her third-floor bedroom window. My granddaughter pressed her palm against the glass, and I saw her mouth form the words, "I'm sorry." Then Emily yanked her away, the curtains snapping shut. You know what the really pathetic part is? Patricia continued, crouching down to my level like I was a child. Emily told us everything, how you mortgaged this house 3 times to pay for her failures. Her college at Harvard, $160,000. Her failed interior design business, $90,000. Her first wedding to that musician who ran off, $45,000. And you just kept giving and giving, thinking it would buy you love. Each number was a dagger. But she wasn't done. The $700,000 in investments, already transferred to accounts Emily can properly manage. The $3 million house, being put to better use. We're converting it to luxury apartments. 6 units at $8,000 a month each. Finally, this old relic will actually generate proper income instead of just draining money on maintenance and sentiment. This house has been in Thomas's family for 5 generations, I whispered. Exactly the problem. 5 generations of stagnation. Time for progress. Robert's already got contractors lined up for Monday. They'll start with gutting your precious library. All those moldy first editions will make excellent kindling. My heart sized. Thomas's collection, including a signed Steinbeck, original Hawthorne, his grandfather's journals from the Civil War. Please, I begged, hating myself for it, at least let me have his books. They're worthless to you, just old paper. Everything has value when you know how to monetize it. Robert's voice came from above. He stood in my doorway, looking down at me with the satisfaction of a predator over fallen prey. A rare book dealer already assessed the collection at $80,000. Amazing what people will pay for other people's memories. Helen's Honda finally rounded the corner, fishtailing slightly on the ice as she rushed to reach me. Behind her, an ambulance followed, lights flashing. Patricia quickly pocketed her phone. "Remember, Margaret," Patricia hissed as she stood. "Sunshine Manor is the generous option. Keep fighting us, and we'll push for a state facility. The kind where they medicate you until you don't remember your own name. Emily's prepared to testify about your recent episodes. The time you called her 43 times in one day, the crying fits, the paranoia about people stealing from you. Those were reactions to the medications," I protested. "Dr. Mitchell kept changing my prescriptions." Dr. Mitchell, who happens to be Patricia's cousin, Helen's voice cut through the night as she rushed up the walkway. "Oh yes, Margaret, I've been doing my research while driving over. Very convenient, wasn't it, Patricia? Your cousin just happened to be on duty for Margaret's surgery?" Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Dr. James Mitchell, suspended twice in New Hampshire for insurance fraud, suddenly gets privileges at Boston General just in time for Margaret's procedure. Interesting timing. The EMTs reached us, gently lifting me onto a gurney. The blood from my reopened incision had soaked through my coat, creating a crimson stain on the white steps, a violent splash of reality against the Christmas card prettiness of the scene. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I heard Emily's voice from the doorway. "This is what's best, Mother. You'll thank me someday." But it wasn't Emily's voice I focused on as the doors closed. It was Sarah's face in that window, her hands still pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks. In that moment, I realized my granddaughter might be the only family I had left who still possessed a conscience. Helen climbed in beside me, gripping my hand. "We're going to fight this, Margaret, every bit of it." But as the ambulance pulled away from the house where I'd raised my daughter, where Thomas and I had built our life, where 5 generations of Sullivans had celebrated Christmases, I wondered if there was anything left to fight for. The morphine the EMTs administered pulled me under, but not before I heard Helen on her phone. "Yes, this is Judge Helen Morrison. I need you to flag all accounts belonging to Margaret Sullivan immediately. I believe we have a case of elder abuse and financial fraud in progress. And contact the FBI's Elder Fraud Division. This appears to be part of a larger pattern." The last thing I remembered was clutching the broken music box to my chest, its shattered dancer a perfect metaphor for everything I'd lost. Sarah's tears haunted me as darkness took hold, and somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing in Christmas Day, a celebration of birth while I faced the death of everything I'd known. The sterile brightness of Mass General's emergency room pierced through my morphine haze like needles. Christmas morning, and instead of opening presents with Sarah, I was having my surgical wound restitched while Helen paced nearby, her phone pressed to her ear, barking legal terminology I couldn't quite follow. "Margaret, I need you to focus," Helen said, ending her call and pulling a chair close to my bed. Her prosecutorial instincts had kicked in fully, transforming my elderly friend into the formidable force who'd once taken down corrupt city officials. "The power of attorney Emily claims you signed. Do you remember signing anything before your surgery?" My mind felt like shattered glass, each memory fragment cutting deeper. There were papers, so many papers. Emily brought them the morning of surgery. She said they were standard medical forms in case something went wrong. My voice broke as the full betrayal crystallized. I was terrified, Helen. My hands were shaking so badly from the pre-op anxiety medication that Emily had to guide my hand. "Guided your hand?" Helen's eyes sharpened. "Margaret, that's coercion at minimum, forgery at worst." A knock interrupted us. A young woman entered, maybe 30, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan? I'm Agent Jessica Chen from the FBI's Elder Justice Initiative. Judge Morrison contacted us about your case." "FBI? The room spun slightly. This was real. This nightmare was actually happening. I've reviewed the preliminary documents, Agent Chen continued, opening a tablet. The power of attorney filed with the Suffolk County Registry shows some irregularities. The notary who supposedly witnessed your signature, Maria Gonzalez, her commission expired 2 years ago. She also happens to be Patricia Coleman's personal assistant. The nausea returned with vengeance. I barely made it to the bedside basin before my stomach expelled bile and blood, the stress ulcers Dr. Mitchell had mentioned, but never properly treated. As I retched, memories flooded back. Emily hovering over me that morning, her nervous laughter, the way she'd kept checking her phone, texting constantly. There's more, Helen said grimly, showing me her phone screen. I had my assistant pull the property transfer records. The deed transfer was filed on December 15th, while you were supposedly incoherent from infection. But here's the interesting part. The signature on the transfer documents is different from your signature on the power of attorney. They couldn't even keep their forgery consistent? I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. Agent Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Sullivan, this appears to be part of a larger pattern. The Colemans have been involved in 3 similar cases in New Hampshire and Vermont. Elderly homeowners, valuable properties, forged documents. 2 of those seniors are now in memory care facilities, unable to testify about what happened to them. Unable to testify. The words chilled me deeper than that freezing doorstep. That's what Emily had planned for me, to be medicated into silence at Sunshine Manor. I need to call my bank, I said suddenly, panic rising. If they have access to my accounts, already frozen, Helen assured me. But Margaret, they'd already withdrawn $430,000 before I could stop them. Electronic transfers over the past 2 weeks, small enough amounts to avoid triggering automatic flags, all to accounts in Emily and David's names. $430,000. 40 years of careful saving, of denying myself vacations and new cars, of shopping sales and clipping coupons so I could leave something for Sarah. Gone. The heart monitor's beeping accelerated. A nurse rushed in, checking my vitals, injecting something into my IV that made the edges of the world go soft. But before I went under, I heard Agent Chen speaking to Helen. We found something else. Dr. Mitchell has been adjusting her medications to induce confusion and memory lapses. The pharmacy records show prescriptions for drugs typically used in chemical restraints for dementia patients, not cardiac recovery. He's been slowly poisoning her. Poisoning. My own doctor, chosen by Emily, had been. I woke hours later to find Helen still there, now joined by 2 more people, a tall black man in an expensive suit and a younger woman with a court reporter's machine. Margaret, this is District Attorney James Williams, Helen introduced. He's personally taking on your case. Mrs. Sullivan, the DA said, his voice deep and reassuring. What's been done to you is criminal. With your permission, we'd like to record your full statement. We're building cases for elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder through medical manipulation, and racketeering charges for the Coleman family. Attempted murder. The words I'd been too afraid to think aloud. They tried to kill me? My voice was barely a whisper. Not kill, Agent Chen corrected gently. Incapacitate. Make you appear mentally incompetent so the property transfer would seem justified. Dr. Note Ezra Wood. Mitchell's medical notes, which we've subpoenaed, show a deliberate pattern of over-medicating and creating complications to extend your vulnerability. Helen squeezed my hand. Margaret, there's something else. Sarah tried to visit you during your surgery recovery. Emily had put you on a no-visitor list except for herself. Sarah's been trying to reach you for weeks. Sarah, my dear granddaughter, is she safe? Emily wouldn't hurt her, would she? The silence that followed told me everything. We've initiated a welfare check, Agent Chen said carefully. Your granddaughter appears to be under significant psychological pressure. Her teachers report dramatic behavioral changes. Withdrawal, crying episodes, refusing to speak in class. They were destroying Sarah, too. My beautiful, bright granddaughter was being traumatized by these monsters. The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not the hot anger of moment, but something ice-cold and diamond-hard. I want them destroyed, I said, meeting the DA's eyes. Not just prosecuted, destroyed. They took my home, my money, my health, and now they're hurting my granddaughter. I will testify to everything. I will give you whatever you need. Williams nodded. We'll start with emergency injunctions. A judge has already issued a temporary restraining order preventing any further property transfers or demolition. The Coleman's assets are being frozen as we speak. But Margaret, I need to warn you. Emily and David will fight back hard. They've already hired Morrison, Kravitz, and Associates, the top criminal defense firm in Boston. My teaching salary and careful savings were being used to hire lawyers to defend against me. How did I raise someone capable of this? I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I taught 5th grade for 30 years. I raised hundreds of children to be kind, to be honest, to care for others. But my own daughter. Greed changes people, Helen said softly. The Colemans saw your assets and twisted Emily into their tool. This isn't the daughter you raised. This is what she became under their influence. But even as Helen tried to comfort me, I remembered Emily's face on those stairs. Not conflicted, not reluctant, but cold and determined. She hadn't been manipulated into this. She'd chosen it. Agent Chen's phone buzzed. She stepped away to answer, her face growing increasingly grave. When she returned, her expression made my chest tighten with fresh dread. We just executed a search warrant at your house, she said. We found Emily's laptop. There are emails dating back 14 months, Margaret. They've been planning this since before your heart problems even started. They researched your medical history, found out about your heart condition, and waited for the right opportunity. 14 months. Every Sunday dinner, every birthday card, every I love you, Mom, all of it had been a performance while she plotted my destruction. The monitor's beeping became erratic again. This time, when the darkness came, I welcomed it. Anything to escape the reality that my daughter had been planning my demise while smiling to my face, hugging me, telling me she loved me. But even in the medicated darkness, I could hear Sarah's face in my mind, pressed against that window, mouthing I'm sorry. If nothing else, I had to survive this for her. Emily might be lost to me, but Sarah still had a chance. I would fight, not for revenge, but for rescue, to save my granddaughter from the monsters her parents had become. The rehabilitation facility Helen had arranged was nothing like the hospital. Warm colors, private rooms, and most importantly, security that kept unwanted visitors away. It had been 3 days since Christmas, 3 days of recovering not just from my reopened surgical wound, but from the systematic poisoning Dr. Mitchell had orchestrated. My body was finally beginning to feel like my own again as the toxic cocktail of unnecessary medications cleared from my system. Helen sat across from me in the sunny common room, legal documents spread across the coffee table like battle plans. Her silver hair caught the morning light as she adjusted her reading glasses, reviewing each paper with the meticulous attention that had made her legendary in Boston's legal circles. Margaret, I found something extraordinary, she said, looking up with an expression I hadn't seen since she'd successfully prosecuted the Beacon Hill embezzlement case 15 years ago. Thomas was even smarter than we knew. My late husband's name still made my heart clench. What do you mean? Remember when he updated his will in 2018, just before his diagnosis? He didn't just update the will. He created something called an irrevocable trust with a very specific clause. Helen pulled out a document, pointing to highlighted sections. The Sullivan Family Heritage Trust. The house cannot be sold, transferred, or modified without the unanimous consent of 3 trustees. 3 trustees? But Thomas only named me and Emily. No, Margaret. He named you, me, and Father Michael O'Brien from St. Mary's. Thomas told me he was adding me as a safeguard, but I thought it was just for the will execution. This trust supersedes any power of attorney. Emily's transfer is completely void. The room spun slightly, not from medication this time, but from pure relief. The house is still mine? Legally, it never stopped being yours. But here's where it gets interesting. Helen's eyes gleamed with prosecutorial fire. The Colemans have already taken out construction loans against the property, $2.4 million. They've committed massive fraud, not just against you, but against 3 different banks. $2.4 million. The number was staggering. They'd leveraged my home for nearly its entire value in less than 2 weeks. There's more, Helen continued, pulling out her phone. This came in this morning. She showed me an email from someone named Christopher Ashford. a mortgage broker in Vermont. His message was brief but devastating. Judge Morrison, I believe the Colemans are running the same scheme they pulled in Burlington. Martha Ashford was my mother. They destroyed her. I have documents. Another victim? Multiple victims. Mr. Ashford sent records of 5 elderly homeowners in Vermont, all with the same pattern: medical emergencies, forged documents, property transfers, and the victims either dying mysteriously or being institutionalized within months. My blood turned to ice. How many of them died? 3. All from complications during routine procedures, all treated by doctors with connections to the Coleman family. The truth hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just fighting for my home or my money. I had narrowly escaped being murdered by my own daughter and her husband's family. A knock at the door interrupted us. Agent Chen entered with a younger agent and someone I didn't expect. Barbara Henley, my neighbor for 20 years, carrying a pasta casserole and looking furious enough to take on an army. Margaret Sullivan, you wonderful fool, Barbara said, setting down the casserole to embrace me carefully. Why didn't you call me? 20 years of friendship and you don't think to call when that witch of a daughter throws you out? Barbara saw everything, Agent Chen explained. She's been documenting the Colemans' activities at your house. She has photographs, videos, and she's organized several neighbors who are willing to testify. Barbara pulled out her phone, swiping through images. Look at this garbage. They had a dumpster delivered on December 26th. They've been throwing out your things, photos, letters, Thomas's books. I snuck over at 2 in the morning and pulled out what I could. She produced a tote bag, and my eyes immediately filled with tears. Inside were Thomas's reading glasses, still in their worn leather case, our wedding album, Sarah's baby pictures, and a stack of love letters Thomas had written me during his naval service in Vietnam. They threw away our memories, I whispered, clutching the letters. They tried to erase you, Barbara corrected fiercely. But Margaret, half the neighborhood is ready to testify. We all knew something was wrong when Emily banned visitors during your recovery. Mrs. Chen next door heard Patricia Coleman saying, "You were better off dead than draining resources. You've made it this far, go ahead and hit. Like to let me know you're still with me. You know, every share you make might help someone out there find a little hope." And before we continue, don't forget to subscribe because, who knows, the next story might just touch your heart. Agent Chen stepped forward. Mrs. Sullivan, with this additional evidence and witness testimony, the DA is upgrading charges. We're now looking at conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud exceeding $10 million when you factor in all their victims, and racketeering. The Colemans are looking at 25 to life. And Emily? I had to ask, though the words scraped my throat raw. The DA is offering her a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for 15 years instead of life. She has 72 hours to decide. 15 years. My daughter might spend 15 years in prison. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who made me Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts, who cried at her father's funeral and promised she'd take care of me, that girl was gone, replaced by someone willing to let me die for money. Helen's phone buzzed. She answered, her face immediately tensing. Yes, she's here. What? When? She grabbed my hand. We'll be right there. What's happened? It's Sarah. She's at Boston Children's Hospital. She took a bottle of Emily's anxiety medication. Margaret, she tried to. Helen couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. My granddaughter had tried to end her life rather than live with what her parents had become. The 20-minute drive to Children's Hospital felt like hours. Every red light was agony, every slow driver a personal assault. Barbara came with us, holding my hand in the back seat, while Helen drove with the focused intensity of someone on a mission. We found Sarah in room 312, looking impossibly small in the hospital bed. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes, an IV dripping steadily into her thin arm. When she saw me, tears immediately began streaming down her face. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to tell someone. I tried to stop them. But Mom said if I talked, you'd die, that you were too weak for the stress. And I didn't know what to do. I carefully gathered her into my arms, mindful of the IV, feeling her body shake with sobs. Shh, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. None of it. I wrote you letters, she choked out. Every day you were in the hospital, Mom burned them. She said you didn't want to hear from me, that you were disappointed in me for not being smarter, not being better. Lies, I said firmly, pulling back to look her in the eyes. All lies. You are the best thing in my life, Sarah Margaret Sullivan. Do you hear me? The very best thing. A commotion in the hallway interrupted us. Emily's voice, shrill and demanding. That's my daughter. You can't keep me from my own daughter. Ma'am, there's a restraining order, a security guard's voice responded. I don't care about your restraining order. Sarah. My granddaughter's monitors began beeping rapidly, her heart rate spiking. She pressed herself against me, trembling. Don't let her in. Please, Grandma, don't let her in. Helen stepped into the hallway. Through the open door, I heard her voice, cold and authoritative. Emily Coleman, if you take one more step toward this room, I will have you arrested for violation of a protective order. Your daughter is now under the temporary custody of her grandmother. You have no rights here. She's my daughter, Emily screamed. That old witch has poisoned her against me. This is all her fault. If she'd just died like she was supposed to. The words hung in the air like a confession. Agent Chen, who'd been standing nearby, stepped forward. Mrs. Coleman, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. As they led Emily away, still screaming obscenities, I held Sarah tighter, feeling her tears soak through my shirt. My daughter was gone, lost to greed and evil. But my granddaughter was here, alive, and for now, that had to be enough. We're going to get through this, I whispered to Sarah. Together, I promise. Outside the window, snow began to fall again, but this time it didn't feel like a shroud. It felt like a cleansing, washing away the old and making room for whatever came next. The Boston Public Library's archives felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of the past week. Helen had suggested we research the Coleman family's history while Sarah recovered, still under protective custody at Children's Hospital. The musty smell of old newspapers and the gentle whisper of turning pages provided an oddly comforting backdrop to our investigation. Found something, Helen whispered, sliding a photocopy across the worn wooden table. It was a Burlington Free Press article from 2019. Local businessman Robert Coleman cleared of fraud charges after key witness dies. The witness, Martha Ashford, Christopher's mother, had suffered a fatal reaction to medication during routine gallbladder surgery. The parallels to my situation sent ice through my veins. Look at this, I pointed to a detail buried in the article's third paragraph. The anesthesiologist was Dr. Carl Mitchell, James Mitchell's brother. Helen's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, cross-referencing medical board records. Carl Mitchell lost his license in Vermont in 2020. James Mitchell suddenly got privileges at Boston General in 2021, just months later. The Colemans must have been planning to relocate their operation. My phone buzzed. A text from Barbara Henley. Emergency. Come to your house now. Bring Agent Chen. We found Barbara standing on my front lawn with 5 other neighbors, forming a human barrier as a construction crew attempted to enter the property. David Coleman stood beside a demolition truck, his face purple with rage. Get out of the way, David shouted at the assembled neighbors. This is private property. It's Margaret Sullivan's property, Mrs. Chen from next door shot back, her normally quiet voice firm with conviction. And we won't let you destroy it. Agent Chen arrived just as David grabbed Barbara's arm, trying to physically move her. The agent's badge appeared instantly. Mr. Coleman, you're in violation of a court-ordered injunction against any modifications to this property. Step back immediately. This is ridiculous. Patricia Coleman emerged from a Lincoln Town car, waving a document. We have permits. We have ownership papers. Forged papers, I said, stepping forward. My voice carried across the yard with the authority of 40 years of teaching, built on lies, theft, and attempted murder. Patricia's perfectly composed mask slipped. You were supposed to stay away. You were supposed to accept your fate like the others. The others? Agent Chen stepped closer, her phone recording. What others, Mrs. Coleman? Patricia realized her mistake too late. Robert Coleman rushed forward, trying to pull his wife back to the car, but she was beyond reason, her careful control finally snapping. Weak, pathetic old people hoarding resources they don't deserve, Patricia spat. Do you know what this house could be? The profit it could generate? But no, you cling to your memories and your traditions while opportunity rots. So you decided to steal it, I said calmly. How many others, Patricia? How many elderly people have you destroyed? We didn't destroy anyone. We maximized underutilized assets. If some people were too fragile to handle change. Patricia, shut up, Robert roared, but the dam had broken. Martha Ashford was fragile, I pushed. So fragile she died. That wasn't supposed to happen, Patricia shrieked. Carl said the dosage was safe, just enough to cause complications, to extend her stay. But she had an allergic reaction nobody knew about. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the construction workers had stopped, staring at Patricia in horror. Agent Chen lowered her phone, her expression grim. Mrs. Coleman, you've just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. As the FBI led the Colemans away in handcuffs, I stood on my front porch, the same porch where Emily had locked me out on Christmas Eve. The neighbors remained, creating a protective circle around the house. Mrs. Chen approached with a steaming thermos of tea. We should have done more, she said softly. We saw Emily changing, saw those people coming and going. We should have checked on you. You're here now, I replied, accepting the tea gratefully. That's what matters. Barbara's phone rang. She answered, her face immediately paling. Margaret, it's the hospital. Sarah's asking for you. She says it's urgent. The drive back to Children's Hospital was tense. What could be so urgent? Had Emily somehow gotten to her? Was Sarah having second thoughts about testifying? We found Sarah sitting up in bed, clutching a small notebook, her face animated for the first time since her overdose. Grandma, I remembered something important. She opened the notebook, her diary, covered in stickers and doodles. Last month, I heard Dad on the phone with someone named Marcus. He said, the Boston job is almost done, but the Cambridge property will be the real score. Grandma, I think there are more victims. Helen immediately called Agent Chen, relaying the information. Within an hour, we had an answer. Professor Evelyn Foster, 91 years old, owned a historic mansion in Cambridge worth $12 million. She'd been admitted to Mount Auburn Hospital 2 weeks ago for pneumonia. Her nephew, previously estranged, had suddenly reappeared with power of attorney papers. The nephew's name, Agent Chen informed us, Marcus Coleman, Robert's younger brother. The network was bigger than we'd imagined. This wasn't just Patricia and Robert, it was an entire family enterprise of elder abuse and murder. Sarah squeezed my hand. There's more, Grandma. I kept a recording. She pulled out her phone, fingers trembling as she found the file. Emily's voice filled the room, cold and calculating. Once Margaret's gone, we split everything 3 ways. The house to us, the investments to Mom and Dad, and the insurance payout goes to infrastructure for the Cambridge job. Marcus says the old professor has no one. She'll be easier than Margaret. My daughter's voice, discussing my death like a business transaction. But what hit hardest was what came next, David's laugh, followed by, your mother's tougher than we thought. Maybe we should have increased Mitchell's dosage from the start. No, Emily's voice replied, too suspicious. Besides, watching her deteriorate was satisfying. Payback for all those years of her perfect motherhood act, making me feel like a failure. Sarah was crying again. I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have given this to someone sooner, but I was scared they'd hurt you more. I held my granddaughter close, this brave child who'd carried such terrible secrets. You saved my life, sweetheart. You saved me. Agent Chen was already on her phone, coordinating with Cambridge police to check on Professor Foster. Helen was calling the DA, updating him on this new evidence. And Barbara, wonderful Barbara, was texting our neighbor network, asking them to research if any other elderly homeowners had suddenly moved to care facilities in recent months. Margaret, Helen said, hanging up her phone. The DA says, with this recording and Patricia's confession, we have enough for federal racketeering charges. This is officially a RICO case now. The entire Coleman family is going down. RICO, the same laws used against organized crime families, because that's what this was. Organized crime wrapped in suburban respectability and family dinners. My phone buzzed with a news alert Barbara had sent. Breaking, FBI raids multiple properties in Elder Fraud Ring. The lead photo showed my house. Yellow crime scene tape across the door, federal agents carrying out boxes of evidence. But what caught my eye was the figure in the background, Emily in handcuffs, being led to a federal transport van. Her face was turned toward the camera, and for just a moment, I saw something in her expression. Not remorse, not sorrow, but surprise. Genuine shock that her plan had failed, that her weak elderly mother had somehow fought back and won. She never expected me to survive, I said quietly, showing the image to Helen. No, Helen agreed. None of them did. They counted on you being alone, frightened, and helpless. They didn't count on you having friends, neighbors, a granddaughter brave enough to speak up, and 40 years of teaching experience that taught you how to fight bullies. As we prepared to leave the hospital with Sarah, temporary custody had been granted that morning. I thought about Thomas. He'd always said I was stronger than I knew. Margaret, he'd tell me, you have steel in your spine disguised as kindness. He'd prepared for this, somehow. The trust, naming Helen as a trustee, even Father O'Brien, Thomas had built safeguards I never knew existed. Even from beyond, my husband was still protecting me. Where are we going, Grandma? Sarah asked as we walked toward the exit. Barbara's house for tonight, I replied. But tomorrow, we start fighting to get our home back. Our real home, not what they tried to turn it into. Together? Sarah asked, hope creeping into her voice for the first time. Together, I confirmed. The Colemans thought they were destroying a weak old woman. Instead, they woke up a grandmother with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Barbara's guest room had become my temporary command center, legal documents and evidence boxes stacked on every surface. It was New Year's Eve, 1 week since Sarah's suicide attempt, and we were preparing for the emergency injunction hearing scheduled for January 2nd. The doorbell rang just as Barbara was bringing me another cup of tea. I'll get it, Barbara called, but returned moments later with a puzzled expression. No one there, but this was taped to the door. She handed me a plain white envelope with my name written in careful block letters. No return address, no postage. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Be careful with your medications. Check the pharmacy records. Someone who wants to help. Helen immediately took the letter, holding it by the edges. This could be evidence. The handwriting looks deliberately disguised, but forensics might pull prints. Another victim? I wondered aloud. Or someone on the inside who's developed a conscience, Helen suggested. She pulled out her laptop. Let's check those pharmacy records. I can access them through the court order. What we found made my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, my prescriptions had been modified 17 times, not just at the hospital, but at my regular pharmacy. The changes were subtle. Dosage increases, drug interactions that shouldn't have been prescribed together, medications that would cause confusion and memory loss when combined. This started before your surgery, Helen said, her voice tight with anger. Margaret, they've been poisoning you slowly for half a year. The room spun. I gripped the table, trying to process this new horror. All those moments of confusion I'd attributed to age, the dizzy spells, the days when I couldn't remember simple things, all deliberately induced. Sarah, who'd been quietly reading in the corner, suddenly spoke up. The handwriting. I've seen it before. She pulled out her school notebook, flipping through pages. Here. My chemistry tutor writes her lowercase ah the same weird way. Your tutor? I asked. Mrs. Danielle Mitchell. She started tutoring me in October. Dad hired her, said I needed to improve my grades. Sarah's face went pale. Mitchell. Oh my God, is she related to... Dr. James Mitchell's wife, Helen, confirmed, already searching public records. Danielle Mitchell, registered pharmacist, license suspended in New Hampshire in 2019 for prescription fraud. The conspiracy kept spreading like cancer. How many people were involved? How deep did this go? My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against Helen's protests, I answered. Mrs. Sullivan? The voice was female, nervous. Please don't hang up. I'm Danielle Mitchell. I sent the letter. Helen grabbed the phone, putting it on speaker while gesturing for me to remain silent. This is Judge Helen Morrison, Mrs. Sullivan's legal representative. Are you aware that contacting her could be considered witness tampering? I know, but I couldn't. I can't do this anymore. The woman's voice broke. They told me it was just about money, that no one would really get hurt. But Mrs. Sullivan was so kind, and Sarah is just a child. And when I heard about the suicide attempt, where are you? Agent Chen's voice cut in. Helen had conference called her without me noticing. The Marriott downtown, room 412. I have documents, recordings, everything. The Colemans were just the Boston branch. This is nationwide. There's a whole network, doctors, pharmacists, lawyers, care facilities. They call it the Harvest. The Harvest. They had a name for destroying elderly people's lives. Within an hour, we were in a federal building secure conference room. Danielle Mitchell sat across from us, looking haggard and terrified. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with hollow eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. It started small, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. My husband owed money to the wrong people after his suspension. The Colemans offered a solution, help with a few prescriptions, nothing fatal, just enough to create confusion. They said it was victimless, that the elderly people were going to care facilities anyway. Victimless? I couldn't contain my anger. I almost lost everything. My granddaughter tried to kill herself. Danielle flinched. I know. God, I know. That's why I'm here, Sarah. Teaching her these past months, seeing how scared she was, how she'd sometimes cry during lessons. I couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled out a flash drive. Everything's on here. Recorded conversations, emails, financial records. There are cells in 12 states. Over 300 victims that I know of. 43 dead from complications. 300 victims. 43 dead. The numbers were staggering. Agent Chen took the drive carefully. You understand you're confessing to multiple felonies? I understand. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. Danielle looked directly at me. Mrs. Sullivan, I know you can never forgive me, but please know, I switched your medications back to the correct ones 3 weeks ago. That's why you've been feeling clearer. I couldn't completely undo the damage, but I tried to stop it. Why? I asked. Why grow a conscience now? Sarah, she admitted. She reminds me of my daughter, the daughter I lost custody of because of my involvement in my husband's crimes. Every time Sarah talked about you, about how much she loved her grandmother, about the Christmas traditions you shared, I saw what I'd thrown away for money. Helen leaned forward. Who's running this? Who's at the top? Danielle's face went white. You don't understand the scale. This isn't just crime. It's an industry. The man at the top is Jonathan Blackwood. He owns a chain of luxury care facilities, medical equipment companies, and has judges in his pocket. The Colemans were middle management. Jonathan Blackwood. I knew that name. Everyone in Boston knew that name. He was a philanthropist, a hospital board member, someone who attended charity galas with senators and governors. He'll kill me for this, Danielle whispered. Once he finds out I've turned. You'll be in protective custody, Agent Chen assured her. This is now a federal case with interstate implications. We're bringing in the full weight of the Justice Department. As we left the federal building, Helen's phone rang constantly. Reporters had gotten wind that something big was breaking. Barbara drove us back to her house through a gauntlet of news vans already gathering on my street. This is going to get ugly, Helen warned. Once this goes public, everyone involved will be scrambling to cover their tracks or cut deals. Margaret, you need to be prepared for things to get worse before they get better. But as I looked at Sarah, who was holding my hand tightly, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. We weren't just fighting for my house anymore. We were exposing a criminal enterprise that had destroyed hundreds of lives. Let them scramble, I said firmly. They thought we were weak, helpless victims. They're about to learn what happens when you corner a grandmother who has nothing left to lose and a granddaughter to protect. Sarah squeezed my hand. We're going to win, aren't we, Grandma? Yes, sweetheart, I replied, thinking of all the victims who'd had no one to fight for them. Not just for us, but for all of them. The harvest is about to face its reckoning. That night, as I lay in Barbara's guest room, I thought about the anonymous letter that had started this avalanche. Danielle Mitchell's crisis of conscience had potentially saved not just me, but hundreds of future victims. Sometimes, I realized, redemption comes from the most unexpected places. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, But for tonight, I allowed myself a moment of grim satisfaction. The predators were becoming the prey, and I was no longer alone in this fight. The news broke at 6 a.m. on January 2nd, just hours before our emergency hearing. Federal investigation exposes nationwide elder fraud rings scrolled across every channel. Barbara's living room became a media command center as Helen fielded calls from reporters, while Agent Chen coordinated with FBI headquarters. "Margaret, you need to see this," Sarah called from the kitchen, where she'd been watching the news on her tablet. The screen showed Jonathan Blackwood at a press conference, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression one of practiced concern. "These allegations are completely baseless," Blackwood said smoothly. "I've devoted my life to caring for our elderly population. The idea that I would harm the very people my facilities serve is absurd and defamatory." Behind him stood a team of lawyers that probably cost more per hour than I'd made in a month of teaching. But what caught my attention was the woman to his left, elegant, composed, and horrifyingly familiar. "Helen," I called, my voice shaking. "That's Judge Patricia Winters. She signed off on Emily's power of attorney filing." Helen's face went pale. "Patricia Winters is on Blackwood's payroll?" "Margaret, she's processed dozens of elder guardianship cases over the past 3 years. If she's compromised..." Agent Chen was already on her phone, barking orders. "We need every case Judge Winters touched reviewed immediately. This is bigger than we thought." The doorbell rang, and Barbara went to answer it, returning with someone unexpected. Father Michael O'Brien from Street. Mary's, the third trustee Thomas had appointed. The elderly priest looked grim but determined. "Margaret, I've come because I've been getting calls all morning," he said, settling into a chair with obvious relief. His arthritis had worsened since I'd last seen him. 17 parishioners have contacted me, all elderly, all with similar stories. Their families suddenly claiming power of attorney, assets disappearing, medications making them confused. 17 more victims, just from one church. "They targeted the faithful," Father O'Brien continued, his Irish accent thickening with anger, "coming to church, volunteering for committees, gaining trust. Then they'd identify the vulnerable ones. Widowed, isolated, wealthy. It's systematic, Margaret. Evil wearing the mask of charity." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your husband's medical records." DM. Danielle Mitchell, even from protective custody, was still trying to help. But why would Thomas's records matter? He died 5 years ago from a heart condition that... The realization hit me like a physical blow. I must have made a sound because Helen was immediately at my side. "Margaret, what is it?" "Thomas's death," I whispered. "What if it wasn't natural?" The room fell silent. Even Agent Chen stopped mid-conversation, turning to stare at me. "Think about it," I continued, my mind racing through memories that suddenly looked different, sinister. "Emily started dating David 6 months before Thomas died. Patricia Coleman became friendly with me at the hospital auxiliary around the same time. Thomas was healthy except for a minor heart condition that required medication. Medication that Emily often picked up for him because I was teaching. Helen was already pulling up records on her laptop. Thomas's prescribing physician was Dr. Physician 1X, Harold Freeman. Let me check. Oh my God. Dr. Freeman's license was revoked in 2021 for prescription fraud. He's currently serving 7 years in federal prison. Can we get Thomas's medical records? I asked Agent Chen. With a court order, yes. But Margaret, if you're right about this, then they murdered my husband, I finished, my voice steady despite the volcanic rage building inside me. They murdered Thomas to isolate me, to make me vulnerable. This wasn't a recent plan. They've been orchestrating this for over 5 years. Sarah gasped, her face white with shock. "Mom killed Grandpa?" "We don't know that yet," Helen said quickly, but her expression suggested otherwise. Father O'Brien reached over and took my hand. "Thomas came to confession the week before he died," he said quietly. "I can't reveal what was said, but I can tell you he was troubled about Emily. He mentioned updating his will, adding protections. Margaret, I think he suspected something. If you find this part truly thought-provoking, go ahead and hit like to show your support. Do you feel the same way as the character in this story?" Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thomas had known. Somehow my brilliant husband had sensed danger and tried to protect me even as they were killing him. The trust, the multiple trustees, the specific clauses, it all made sense now. Agent Chen's phone rang. She listened, her expression darkening with each passing second. Danielle Mitchell just gave us access to encrypted files. There's a list, they call it the pipeline. It shows planned victims for the next 5 years. Margaret, you were marked for acquisition in 2018, right after Thomas's death. But you proved, and I quote, more resilient than anticipated. So they escalated, Helen said. The surgery provided the perfect opportunity. There's more, Agent Chen continued. The list has 342 names in the greater Boston area alone. Estimated value of targeted assets, $800 million. Barbara, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood. I need to call my mother in Worcester. She's 93, owns her house outright, and just had a new home health aide start last month. As Barbara rushed to make her call, the doorbell rang again. This time it was a young man in his 20s, looking terrified but determined. Mrs. Sullivan? I'm Christopher Ashford. I drove down from Burlington. I have something you need to see. He pulled out a battered notebook. This was my mother's. She kept notes about everything strange that happened before she died. Look at this entry from 2 weeks before her surgery. I read Martha Ashford's careful handwriting. Emily Sullivan visited today with her new boyfriend David. Such a nice young couple, so interested in my stories about the old days. They asked about my house, about whether I had family to help me. Something felt off, but I can't put my finger on it. Perhaps I'm just becoming paranoid in my old age. Emily visited your mother? I asked, stunned. Multiple times. She was scoping out victims for the Colemans before bringing them to Boston. My mother was their test run. When she proved too sharp, too suspicious, they had her killed. The notebook contained more entries, each more damning than the last. Emily and David had visited dozens of elderly people across New England, all of whom later faced medical emergencies and property transfers. We have enough, Agent Chen announced. Judge Morrison, can you file for an emergency exhumation order for Thomas Sullivan's remains? Already drafting it, Helen replied. As the morning progressed toward our afternoon hearing, more pieces fell into place. Barbara's mother was safe, but revealed that her new aide had been asking suspicious questions. Father O'Brien's parishioners began compiling evidence. Christopher Ashford connected us with other victims' families in Vermont. Then, just before noon, the news broke that sent shockwaves through Boston. Judge Patricia Winters arrested on federal corruption charges. The screen showed Winters being led away in handcuffs, her judicial robes replaced with a jail jumpsuit. The reporter explained that she'd been taking bribes to approve fraudulent guardianships and power of attorney documents for over 4 years. Without Winters, their whole system collapses, Helen said with satisfaction. Every case she touched is now under review. The emergency hearing this afternoon is being handled by Judge Robert Chen, no relation to our agent, but a man with an impeccable reputation. My phone rang. It was Emily, calling from federal detention. You've destroyed everything! She screamed before I could speak. You couldn't just accept your place, could you? You always had to be the perfect mother, the suffering widow, the noble teacher. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up in your shadow? Emily, I said calmly, though my heart was breaking. Did you kill your father? The silence stretched for long seconds before she laughed, a cold, bitter sound. He was going to change his will. He suspected David wasn't who he seemed. So yes, Mother, I increased his medication, just a little each day. Enough to stress his heart. The perfect crime, until you refused to die like you were supposed to. There it was. My daughter had confessed to murdering her father. This call is being recorded, Agent Chen said, having grabbed the phone. Emily Coleman, you've just confessed to murder. The line went dead. I sat in Barbara's kitchen, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that had destroyed hundreds of lives, holding Thomas's picture from our last anniversary. He smiled back at me, unaware that his daughter was already planning his death. We're going to get them all, I promised his memory, every last one of them. The emergency hearing was set for 2 p.m., but at noon something unexpected happened. Sarah pulled me aside in Barbara's hallway, away from the lawyers and agents who'd transformed the living room into a war room. Grandma, I need to show you something, she whispered, pulling out her phone. Remember the music box you were bringing me on Christmas Eve, the one that broke? I nodded, my heart aching at the memory of that shattered gift lying in the snow. I went back for it the next morning, Sarah continued. Mom didn't know. I snuck out before dawn and found all the pieces. But Grandma, there was something inside the base that fell out when it broke. She showed me photos on her phone. Among the scattered gears and broken porcelain, there was a small key and a piece of paper with numbers. 4267739. Boston room. A safety deposit box, I breathed. But I don't have one at that number. Maybe Thomas did, Helen suggested, having overheard. A box you didn't know about. Within an hour, Agent Chen had obtained a warrant to access any safety deposit boxes under Thomas's name. We found it at Boston Private Bank, a box he'd opened just 1 month before his death. What we discovered inside changed everything. Thomas had left a leather journal, every page filled with his careful handwriting. The first entry was dated 6 months before he died. I fear for Margaret. Emily has changed since meeting David Coleman. She asks strange questions about our finances, our insurance policies. David's family seems too interested in our home, our assets. I've started this record in case something happens to me. If you're reading this, my dear Margaret, know that I tried to protect you. I sank into a chair at the bank's private viewing room, tears streaming down my face as I read my husband's words. He documented everything, suspicious conversations, times Emily had accessed his medications, meetings with lawyers to create the trust. Look at this, Helen pointed to an entry from 2 weeks before his death. Emily brought my heart medication today. The pills look different, slightly larger, different shade of white. When I questioned it, she said the pharmacy switched brands. I've kept samples of both versions. They're in an envelope behind this journal. I pray I'm just being paranoid, but if something happens to me, test them. Agent Chen immediately bagged the envelope. We'll have these analyzed within hours. The journal continued with more revelations. Thomas had hired a private investigator to look into the Colemans. The investigator's report, tucked between pages, revealed Robert Coleman's previous identity. He'd changed his name from Robert Kalinsky after serving time for fraud in Illinois 15 years ago. Thomas knew, I whispered. He knew everything. Why didn't he go to the police? Sarah asked. I found the answer in his final entry, written the day before he died. Margaret's happiness is everything to me. How can I tell her that our daughter has been corrupted? That Emily is planning something terrible? I've done what I can to protect her legally, but I can't bear to break her heart while I'm alive. If something happens to me, at least she'll have the truth and the tools to fight back. The music box I bought for Sarah's future 16th birthday contains the key to this box. I've asked Father O'Brien to ensure Margaret gets it when the time is right. I love you, Margaret. Be strong. Father O'Brien gasped. Thomas asked me to give you that music box if anything suspicious happened. But his death seemed natural, and I thought, God forgive me, I should have trusted his instincts. He protected me even in death, I said, clutching the journal. He knew they'd kill him, but he made sure I'd have what I needed to survive. Agent Chen's phone buzzed. The preliminary test on those pills is back. The ones Thomas suspected were tampered with contained 3 times the normal dosage of his heart medication, mixed with a drug that accelerates heart rate. That combination would cause a fatal heart attack within days. Murder. Premeditated, calculated murder of the kindest man I'd ever known. The hearing that afternoon took on new urgency. Judge Robert Chen, a stern man in his 60s with a reputation for despising corruption, reviewed the evidence with growing disgust. The courtroom was packed with reporters, victims' families, and curious spectators. Emily was brought in wearing shackles, her designer clothes replaced with orange jail scrubs. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When she saw me, her face contorted with rage. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "If you'd just died..." "Silence the defendant," Judge Chen ordered sharply. Helen presented our case methodically. The forged documents, the poison medications, Thomas's murder, the nationwide conspiracy. With each piece of evidence, the judge's expression grew darker. "Your Honor," the prosecutor added, "we've just received word that Jonathan Blackwood was arrested attempting to board a private jet to the Cayman Islands. We've also frozen over $400 million in assets connected to this criminal enterprise." When it came time for victim impact statements, I stood on legs that felt like water. Sarah stood with me, her hand in mine. Your Honor, they didn't just steal money or property, I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. They stole my husband's final years. They stole my daughter's soul, turning her into someone capable of patricide. They tried to steal my sanity, my freedom, my life itself. I held up Thomas's journal. My husband died trying to protect me. Hundreds of elderly people weren't so fortunate. They died alone, confused, thinking their families had abandoned them, never knowing they'd been murdered for money. Sarah spoke next, her young voice cutting through the courtroom's tension. My parents told me Grandma didn't love me anymore. They said she was crazy, dangerous. They made me lie to my teachers, my friends. They made me watch while they planned to kill her. I tried to tell someone, but they said they'd put me in foster care, that I'd never see Grandma again. Her voice broke. I took those pills because I couldn't live with what I knew and couldn't stop. But Grandma saved me, even while she was being destroyed herself. That's what real love looks like, not what my parents showed me. Judge Chen's voice was grave when he spoke. In 30 years on the bench, I've never encountered evil of this magnitude dressed in such suburban respectability. The systematic targeting of our elderly citizens, the corruption of family bonds, the perversion of medical and legal systems. This is a cancer on our society. He turned to Emily. Emily Coleman. You are denied bail and will remain in federal custody pending trial for murder, attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and racketeering. Given your confession recorded this morning, I expect you'll spend the rest of your natural life in prison. Emily screamed, lunging toward me, but the bailiffs restrained her. As they dragged her away, she shrieked, "I'm your daughter, your blood. You're supposed to love me no matter what." I did love you, I called back, my voice steady despite my breaking heart. I loved the daughter I raised, but that person died long before your father did. You killed her when you chose greed over family. The courtroom erupted as reporters rushed to file their stories. But I only had eyes for the small key in my hand, the one from the music box. Thomas's final gift hadn't just been evidence. It had been validation that my instincts were right, that the danger was real, and that I was strong enough to survive it. We're going home, I told Sarah, our real home. But the Colemans. Our finished, Helen interrupted with satisfaction. The judge just signed an order returning the house immediately and awarding you damages of $12 million from the Coleman estate. Margaret, you've won. Won. Such a hollow word when I'd lost my husband and daughter. But looking at Sarah's face, seeing hope return to her eyes, I realized Thomas would understand. We'd saved our granddaughter. We'd stopped monsters from hurting others. That night, back in our Victorian home, still bearing scars from the Colemans' brief occupation but ours again, Sarah and I carefully repaired the broken music box together. When it finally played Silent Night again, the melody seemed different somehow. Not just a Christmas song, but a song of survival, of love that transcends death, of justice finally served. The first week of January brought an unexpected snowstorm to Boston, blanketing the city in 2 feet of white silence. Sarah and I were in Thomas's study, my study now, carefully cataloging evidence for the federal prosecutors when Barbara burst through the front door without knocking. "Margaret, you need to hear this," she said, breathless from running through the snow. She held up an old cassette recorder. My mother just called. She found this in her attic, a recording from her bridge club meeting 6 months ago. Patricia Coleman was there, and she didn't know Mother's hearing aid could record. We gathered around as Barbara pressed play. Patricia's voice filled the room, wine-slurred but unmistakably clear. The old fools never see it coming. Take Margaret Sullivan, sitting on a $3 million house, acting like she's poor because she clips coupons. These Depression-era hoarders need to be relieved of their assets. It's natural selection. If they're too weak to protect what they have, they don't deserve it. Then another voice, one that made my blood freeze, Emily's. Mother's always been pathetically trusting. Still thinks the world runs on kindness and hard work. Once Dad's gone, she'll be like a sheep among wolves. The medication adjustment should handle that problem within the month. This was from 6 months ago. They'd been discussing Thomas's murder like a dinner recipe while playing bridge with elderly women they were simultaneously targeting. Agent Chen, who'd arrived for our morning evidence review, immediately took possession of the recording. This is premeditation. This upgrades Emily's charges to first-degree murder. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Massachusetts State Prison. With Agent Chen's nod, I answered on speaker. Mrs. Sullivan? The voice was male, nervous. This is Randy Fitzgerald. I was Robert Coleman's cellmate in Illinois 15 years ago. I heard about his arrest on the news. I have information you need. Go on, Agent Chen encouraged. Robert used to brag about his retirement plan. Said he'd studied how medieval nobles stole from monasteries, infiltrate, gain trust, then plunder. He had notebooks full of research on elder law loopholes, medical vulnerabilities, how to fake dementia symptoms. He called it the blueprint. Do you still have any of this? Agent Chen asked urgently. Better. I have his original notebook. He left it behind when he got early release. I kept it thinking it might be worth something someday. There are names, dates, plans going back 20 years. The Colemans aren't the first identity he's used. Within hours, Randy Fitzgerald was in protective custody, and the notebook was in FBI hands. The scope kept expanding. Robert Coleman had been running similar schemes since the 1990s under different names in different states. The body count was approaching 60 confirmed victims. Sarah, who'd been quietly organizing Thomas's journal entries on the computer, suddenly gasped. Grandma, look at this. She'd found a hidden file on Thomas's old laptop, password protected with my birthday. Inside were dozens of audio files. Thomas had been secretly recording conversations with Emily for months before his death. We listened in horror as Emily coached David through practicing his concerned son-in-law routine. Another recording captured her on the phone with Dr. Lakes Amberley Mitchell, discussing optimal dosage for confusion without permanent damage. The worst was her laughing with Patricia about how she'd convinced me to sign a life insurance policy, telling me it was for Sarah's college fund. $2 million, Emily's recorded voice said gleefully. All it took was tears and mentioning Sarah's future. Mother, the eternal martyr, signed without reading the beneficiary clause. Helen, who'd been reviewing financial documents, looked up sharply. Margaret, did you know the beneficiary was changed to David Coleman 3 days before your surgery? Another betrayal, another theft planned. But Thomas had known, had documented everything. There's video too, Sarah said, clicking another file. The screen showed our dining room from Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Thomas must have hidden a camera beforehand. The video showed Emily slipping something into Thomas's coffee while I was in the kitchen. He pretended not to notice, then switched cups with her when she looked away. Emily spent the rest of dinner looking increasingly frustrated as Thomas remained perfectly alert. He knew, I whispered. He knew she was trying to poison him. The next video was dated 1 week before Thomas died. He sat alone in his study, looking directly at the camera. Margaret, if you're watching this, it means they succeeded. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them, couldn't save myself. But everything you need is here. Don't blame yourself for Emily's choices. Some people are just born wrong, and no amount of love can fix them. Save Sarah. She's the only good thing to come from Emily. I love you. Be strong. I was sobbing by the end, Sarah crying with me. My brilliant, brave husband had spent his last months gathering evidence while knowing his daughter was going to kill him. He'd chosen to die rather than destroy me with the truth while he lived. Agent Chen's phone rang. She listened, her expression growing grim. Jonathan Blackwood just made a deal. Full cooperation, in exchange for 25 years instead of life. He's providing names, dates, financial records for the entire network. 25 years? Barbara protested. That's all he gets for destroying hundreds of lives? He's 73, Agent Chen pointed out. 25 years is effectively life, and what he's giving us will save countless future victims. He's already provided evidence of 32 active operations in progress that we can stop immediately. One of those operations, we learned, involved a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor in Brookline whose nephew had suddenly reappeared after 20 years of estrangement. Another targeted a retired federal judge whose son was deeply in debt to casino operators. The network had been patient, sometimes spending years grooming family members before activating them. Mrs. Sullivan, Agent Chen continued, Blackwood specifically mentioned Emily as one of his star recruits. He has emails from her proposing expansion into school districts, targeting retired teachers with pensions. My former colleagues. Emily had been planning to go after people I'd worked with for decades. That evening, as Sarah and I ate dinner in our reclaimed dining room, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Grandma, do you think Mom was always evil? Or did they make her that way? I chose my words carefully. Your mother was always ambitious, always wanted more than we could give her. But evil? I think evil is a choice, sweetheart. A series of small compromises that lead to bigger ones, until you can justify anything. The Colemans didn't create your mother's greed. They just gave it direction and permission. Will she ever understand what she did wrong? I don't know. Prison might force her to confront herself, or it might just make her more bitter. But that's not our burden to carry anymore. Sarah nodded, then pulled out something I hadn't expected, the repaired music box. I've been thinking about Great-Grandpa's message. He hid the key in something meant for my future, because he knew you'd never let go of a gift for me. Even planning for his death, he was thinking about how to protect us. She wound the key, and silent night filled the room. But this time, I heard it differently, not as a Christmas carol, but as Thomas's final message. Even in the darkest night, there could be peace, hope, and divine justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Danielle Mitchell in witness protection. They found 12 more music boxes in Blackwood's warehouse, all with hidden compartments. Your husband's idea inspired their evidence-hiding system. In trying to protect you, he gave them a blueprint they turned into part of their operation. I thought you should know. Your love story became their tactical manual. I'm sorry. The irony was breathtaking. Thomas's love had been weaponized against others, but ultimately, it was that same love, documented in journals and recordings, that would destroy the entire network. Tomorrow, we testify to the grand jury, Agent Chen reminded us as she prepared to leave for the night. Are you ready? I looked at Sarah, at Thomas's portrait on the wall, at the music box still playing its gentle melody. We're ready, I said. Let them all fall. The grand jury convened on January 8th in a federal courthouse surrounded by armed guards. Death threats had been pouring in since the arrest made national news. Apparently the Colemans and Blackwood had associates willing to kill to protect their secrets. As Sarah and I entered through a secure entrance, Agent Chen briefed us one final time. Margaret, they've uncovered something massive overnight. The network had a Christmas Eve protocol called Silent Night. Every December 24th, they would execute multiple property transfers simultaneously while families were distracted by celebrations. How many? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. This past Christmas alone? 43 properties nationwide worth approximately $200 million. You were supposed to be number 44. 43 families destroyed while opening presents, singing carols, celebrating Christ's birth. The blasphemy of it made me physically ill. Inside the courthouse, we were led to a secure waiting room where other victims had gathered. I recognized Professor Evelyn Foster from Cambridge, the 91-year-old the Colemans had been targeting next. She sat ramrod straight despite her walker, eyes blazing with fury. Mrs. Sullivan, she said, gripping my hand with surprising strength, you saved my life. I was 2 days away from signing papers my nephew Marcus had prepared. 2 days from losing everything my late husband and I built over 70 years. Behind her sat a younger woman, perhaps 50, crying quietly. My father died last month, she told us. Heart attack during routine gallbladder surgery. Now we know it wasn't natural. The anesthesiologist was part of their network. Victim after victim shared their stories while we waited. The network hadn't just stolen money. They destroyed entire family legacies, charitable foundations, small businesses built over generations. When my turn came to testify, I entered the grand jury room carrying Thomas's journal, the repaired music box, and a photograph of our family from our last Christmas together. 23 jurors sat in tiered rows, their faces grave. The prosecutor, James Williams, began gently. Mrs. Sullivan, please tell us about Christmas Eve 2024. I spoke for 2 hours, detailing everything from that freezing doorstep to discovering Thomas's murder. When I played the recording of Emily confessing to killing her father, several jurors wiped away tears. Your daughter planned your death for over 5 years? One juror asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Longer, I replied, showing them an email Danielle Mitchell had provided. This is from Emily to Jonathan Blackwood in 2018, shortly after she met David Coleman. She wrote, my parents are asset-rich but cash-poor. Father is the obstacle. Once removed, mother will be malleable. Estimated timeline, 5 to 7 years for complete acquisition. Complete acquisition, like I was a property to be developed, not a mother who'd raised her. Sarah testified next, her young voice steady as she described the psychological torture of living with parents who were planning her grandmother's murder. They made me rehearse lies, she told the jury. Every week, they'd quiz me on Grandma's supposed symptoms, make me practice looking sad when discussing her decline. They said if I didn't perform well enough, Grandma would suffer more. When she revealed that David had threatened to have me put down like a sick dog if I resisted too much, the jury's collective gasp echoed through the room. The evidence presentation took 3 days. Financial records showed the network had stolen over $1 billion in assets over 20 years. Medical records documented systematic poisoning, surgical complications, and suspicious deaths. The FBI presented a chart showing the network's structure, hundreds of conspirators across dozens of states, all feeding wealth upward to Blackwood and his inner circle. On day 4, something unexpected happened. Emily requested to testify via video link from federal prison. Against Helen's advice, I agreed to be present. Emily appeared on the screen in her orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair now stringy and unkempt, but her eyes remained cold, calculating. I want immunity, she began. That's not how this works, Prosecutor Williams replied sternly. You've already confessed to murder. You're here to provide information, not negotiate. Emily's laugh was bitter. Fine, then let me tell you about the victims you don't know about, the homeless people we practiced on, the clinical trials at nursing homes that were actually poison tests, the doctors who refused to cooperate and had accidents. For an hour, Emily detailed horrors beyond imagination. The network hadn't just targeted the wealthy elderly. They'd used the poor and vulnerable as test subjects, perfecting their methods on people no one would miss. Why? Williams finally asked. You had everything. Loving parents, education, opportunities. Why? Emily looked directly at the camera, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the daughter I'd raised. Because love doesn't pay bills. Kindness doesn't buy respect. My mother spent 40 years teaching ungrateful kids for pennies while sitting on millions in property value. My father died clutching his precious principles while I watched my friends vacation in Europe on their trust funds. She turned to look at me through the screen. You taught me to be good, Mother. But the world rewards people like the Colemans. So I chose to be like them instead of you. And now you'll spend your life in prison, I replied quietly. While I'm free, with Sarah, in our home. You chose wrong, Emily. Her face contorted with rage. You got lucky. If that stupid nurse hadn't grown a conscience, if Father hadn't hidden evidence, if you hadn't chosen evil, I interrupted. Every step was a choice, Emily. You chose to poison your father. You chose to steal from me. You chose to traumatize your daughter. And now you're choosing to feel sorry for yourself instead of repenting. The video cut off, but not before I saw Emily's mask finally crack, revealing not remorse but panic, the realization that her manipulation would no longer work. The grand jury deliberated for only 3 hours. They returned indictments on all charges, including 342 counts of murder, attempted murder, fraud, racketeering, and elder abuse. It was the largest elder fraud case in United States history. As we left the courthouse, snow began falling again, gentle flakes that reminded me of that terrible Christmas Eve. But this time, I wasn't alone on cold steps. Sarah held my hand, Helen and Barbara flanked us protectively, and federal agents ensured our safety. "Grandma," Sarah asked as we reached our car, "what happens now?" "Now we rebuild," I said, thinking of Thomas, of all the victims who hadn't survived, of the justice finally being served. "We take back our lives, honor the dead, and make sure this never happens again." That night, safe in our home, I opened Thomas's journal to a page I hadn't noticed before. His handwriting, shaky near the end, spelled out, "Margaret, my love, evil may triumph temporarily, but love leaves evidence. Our love will be their downfall." He was right. The love that led him to protect me, that made Danielle Mitchell grow a conscience, that gave Sarah courage to survive, that love had destroyed an empire built on cruelty. As Sarah and I prepared dinner together, the news played in the background. Breaking news: Congress announces emergency hearings on elder protection laws, calling the Coleman, Ass, Blackwood network a national shame, requiring immediate legislative action. Change was coming. Thomas's death, though tragic, would lead to laws protecting countless future victims. Emily's evil had inadvertently sparked a nationwide reckoning with elder abuse. The music box sat on our mantel, playing its tune whenever we wound it. No longer just Silent Night, but a song of survival, justice, and love that transcends even death itself. The trial was set for March, but by late January, the investigation had taken an even darker turn. I was in the kitchen making breakfast for Sarah when Agent Chen arrived, her face grim. "Margaret, we need to talk about Dr. James Mitchell," she said, accepting the coffee I offered. "The FBI has been investigating his past, and what we've found. It's worse than we imagined." Sarah looked up from her homework. "Worse than trying to kill Grandma?" "I'm afraid so," Agent Chen replied. "Dr. Mitchell isn't just Patricia Coleman's cousin. He's Patricia's half-brother. Same mother, different fathers. They've been hiding this relationship for 20 years." The room seemed to tilt. "He's actually their family?" "There's more. Remember how you mentioned your heart problems started about 6 months before your surgery? We've discovered that Dr. Mitchell was your primary care physician's golf partner. He had access to your medical records long before he became your surgeon. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take." Helen, who'd just arrived for our morning strategy session, set down her briefcase with a thud. "Are you saying he caused her heart problems?" Agent Chen nodded grimly. "We found evidence that he'd been adding a drug called digitoxin to medication samples he gave your regular doctor to pass along to you. Small doses over time can damage heart valves, creating the need for surgery." My legs gave out, and I sank into a chair. They hadn't just waited for an opportunity, they'd created one. My heart problems, the surgery, the complications, all orchestrated. "But why?" Sarah asked. "Why go through all that trouble?" "Control," Agent Chen explained. "A sudden illness would raise suspicions, but a gradual decline, followed by necessary surgery, gave them the perfect window. Margaret would be vulnerable, dependent, and if she died, it would seem natural." The doorbell rang, and Barbara went to answer it. She returned with Christopher Ashford and someone unexpected, a thin, nervous-looking man in his 40s wearing a rumpled suit. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is my friend Daniel Park," Christopher introduced. "He's a forensic accountant who's been investigating the Colemans privately. He found something you need to see." Daniel spread documents across my dining table. "I've traced the Coleman-Mitchell family finances back 30 years. They're not just related. They're part of a medical dynasty that's been operating since the 1970s. Patricia and James's mother, Dorothy Mitchell, was a nurse who lost her license for euthanizing patients without consent. She killed people?" Sarah gasped. 12 confirmed victims in the 70s, Daniel continued. All elderly, all had recently updated their wills. She served 15 years in prison, got out in 1991, and immediately began teaching her children the family business. He showed us a family tree that looked more like a criminal organization chart. The Mitchell-Coleman clan had members in medical, legal, and financial positions across New England. They'd been literally bred and trained for elder fraud. Dr. Mitchell has performed surgery on 43 of the network's victims, Daniel revealed. 31 died within 6 months. The 12 who survived were all declared incompetent and institutionalized. I thought of those 12 people, locked away, possibly still aware but unable to communicate their truth. We need to find them, I said urgently. If they're still alive, they deserve freedom. Already in progress, Agent Chen assured me. We have teams visiting every facility connected to the network. My phone rang. The hospital. Mrs. Sullivan? This is Dr. Rebecca Harrison from Boston General. I'm calling about some irregularities we've discovered in your medical records. What kind of irregularities? Your surgical video is missing portions. Specifically, 40 minutes in the middle where Dr. Mitchell was operating alone. We've also found that he accessed the pharmacy after hours the night before your surgery. Mrs. Sullivan, I believe he planted something in your chest cavity during surgery. The words didn't make sense. Planted something? We need to do an immediate X-ray. Can you come in today? 2 hours later, I sat in a hospital room staring at an X-ray that showed a small capsule near my heart. Dr. Harrison, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes behind thick glasses, looked troubled. It appears to be a slow-release medication capsule. Highly experimental, not FDA approved. From what we can determine, it's been releasing small amounts of a cardiotoxin that would eventually cause complete heart failure. He put a time bomb in my chest? I whispered. Essentially, yes. We need to remove it immediately. No, I said, surprising everyone. Not yet. If we remove it now, we lose evidence. Can you document everything, get video, multiple witnesses? Doctor. Harrison nodded slowly. You're very brave, Mrs. Sullivan. Yes, we can do that. The capsule appears to have several months of medication left. A few more days won't significantly increase your risk. Helen grabbed my hand. Margaret, this is attempted murder with evidence literally inside your body. Exactly, I replied. This will bury them all. That evening, as we prepared for the documented surgery, Sarah sat beside my hospital bed. Grandma, weren't you scared, having that thing inside you? Terrified, I admitted. But anger is stronger than fear, sweetheart. They put a weapon in my chest, thinking it would kill me slowly, invisibly. Instead, it's going to be the evidence that puts them away forever. The surgery the next morning was performed by Dr. Harrison, with FBI agents recording everything. The capsule they removed was exactly what we'd suspected, a poison delivery system designed to kill over 12 to 18 months. The genius of it, Dr. Harrison explained afterward, is that by the time symptoms became severe, the capsule would have dissolved, leaving no trace. If you hadn't escaped their control, no one would have ever known. Agent Chen had the capsule rushed to the FBI lab. Within hours, they had confirmation. The same devices had been found in 3 exhumed bodies of previous victims. Dr. Mitchell had been murdering people with untraceable poison for years. That night, Emily called from prison. I almost didn't answer, but Helen nodded encouragingly. You found it, didn't you? Emily's voice was flat, defeated. The capsule. You knew? I couldn't hide my shock. I knew he was doing something during surgeries. I didn't know what. Mother, I need you to understand. I never wanted you dead. Just controlled, manageable. The Colemans promised no one would actually die. Your father died, Emily. Martha Ashford died. Dozens of people died. I know. She whispered. I know that now. Mom, Dr. Mitchell kept records, detailed records of every surgery, every poison, every victim. They're in a storage unit in Quincy. Unit 447. The key is hidden in Patricia Coleman's garden gnome. Why are you telling me this? Because Sarah doesn't deserve to grow up thinking her mother was a complete monster. I made horrible choices, Mother, but I won't let them kill any more people. The combination is Dad's birthday. She hung up before I could respond. Within an hour, the FBI had the storage unit surrounded. Inside, they found what amounted to a serial killer's trophy room. Medical records, videos, photographs of victims, and detailed notes on each murder. Doctor, Mitchell had documented everything with the pride of a craftsman. Reading through his notes later, one entry stood out. Margaret Sullivan, the one that got away. Note for future. Emotional support systems must be eliminated before primary target. Her friend network proved too strong. Barbara, Helen, my neighbors, they'd saved my life just by caring, by refusing to abandon me when the Colemans tried to isolate me. He's finished, Agent Chen said with satisfaction. With this evidence, Dr. Mitchell will get the death penalty. The entire network will fall. But even in victory, I couldn't shake the horror of what we'd uncovered. This wasn't just fraud or theft. It was systematic murder disguised as medical care, a generational evil passed from mother to children like a poisoned inheritance. That night, Sarah and I lit candles for all the victims. 43 confirmed dead, 12 institutionalized, hundreds defrauded. Each flame represented a life stolen, a family destroyed. We stopped them, Grandma, Sarah said softly. That has to count for something. It does, I assured her, though my heart remained heavy. Every future victim saved makes their sacrifice mean something. The FBI storage unit in Quincy had become a crime scene that made even seasoned investigators pale. I stood outside while agents cataloged the horrors within, unable to bring myself to look at the trophy collection of murdered elderly people. Sarah waited in the car with Barbara, shielded from this latest revelation of her parents' monstrosity. Agent Chen emerged, her professional composure cracked. Margaret, we found something specific about Thomas. Dr. Mitchell kept a detailed journal about his murder. Emily didn't just increase his medication. She and Mitchell planned every detail for 6 months. She handed me a photocopy, Mitchell's neat handwriting documenting my husband's assassination. Thomas Sullivan, day 120. Subject showing expected cardiac stress. Emily reports he's hiding symptoms from wife. Perfect. Increased dosage approved. Expected termination within 2 weeks. Expected termination. My Thomas reduced to a clinical note. There's more, Agent Chen continued reluctantly. Emily kept her own records. Would you like to see them? Against my better judgment, I nodded. The pages she showed me were in Emily's handwriting, but the words belonged to a stranger. Father suspects. He's been asking questions about David's family. Mitchell says we need to accelerate timeline. I suggested Valentine's Day, poetic, dying of a broken heart. Mother will be too grief-stricken to ask questions. Valentine's Day. Thomas died February 13th, one day before. Even in murder, Emily had shown a twisted sense of drama. Helen arrived with the prosecutor, James Williams, both looking energized. The grand jury has issued additional indictments. Dr. Grand Jury has issued additional indictments. Mitchell is being charged with 47 counts of first-degree murder. The Coleman parents, 32 counts each. And Emily. Williams paused. Emily is now facing federal capital murder charges. The death penalty. My daughter might be executed for killing her father. I need to see her, I said suddenly. Everyone protested, but I insisted. 2 hours later, I sat in a federal detention center interview room, waiting for Emily to be brought in. When she appeared, I barely recognized her. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her diminished frame, her hair gray at the roots, her eyes hollow. You found the storage unit, she said without preamble. Why did you tell me about it? Emily laughed bitterly. Because I'm already dead, Mother. Either by lethal injection or by the Coleman's associates in prison. At least this way, Sarah might remember one decent thing I did. Tell me the truth, I demanded. All of it. You owe me that much. Emily studied me for a long moment. The truth? I hated you. For years I hated you. Perfect Margaret Sullivan, beloved teacher, devoted wife, selfless mother. Do you know what it's like growing up in the shadow of a saint? I never claimed to be. You didn't have to. Emily's voice cracked. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have you as a mother. Teachers, neighbors, even my friends. Your mother is so wonderful, so kind, so generous, but where was that generosity when I needed designer clothes, when I wanted to go to Europe with my friends? You always had money for charity, for your students' families, but never for the things I wanted. We gave you everything we could afford, while sitting on a $3 million house. You could have sold it, moved somewhere smaller, given me the life I deserved. But no, family legacy was more important than your living daughter's happiness. I stared at my daughter, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. So you killed your father for money? I killed him because he was weak, Emily spat. Just like you, content with mediocrity, with being middle-class nobility in a crumbling house. The Colemans showed me what real power looked like, what taking instead of waiting looked like. And now you're in prison forever. Emily's facade finally cracked. I know what I am, Mother. I know what I've become. But I need you to know, When I was very young, before the wanting consumed everything, I did love you. Both of you. There was a moment, maybe when I was 5 or 6, when I was happy with our little life. What happened? I asked, tears falling despite my anger. I grew up. I saw how the world really worked. The cruel thrive while the kind suffer. I chose to be cruel. She met my eyes. I chose wrong, but I chose with open eyes. Don't forgive me, Mother. Don't you dare forgive me. Let me carry this guilt properly. Emily, there's something else. Something not in the storage unit. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Jonathan Blackwood has a list. Not victims. Clients. Powerful people who've hired the network to eliminate their elderly relatives. Senators, CEOs, celebrities. It's hidden in his yacht, the one moored in Boston Harbor, behind the captain's mirror. Why are you telling me this? Because those people are still free, still planning murders. I may be a monster, Mother, but even monsters can choose their final act. Mine is making sure every single person involved in this burns. Guards entered to take her back to her cell. As she stood, Emily looked at me one last time. Tell Sarah I said to be like you, not me. Tell her kindness might not win, but cruelty destroys the winner too. I left the prison shaking. Helen and Agent Chen were waiting in the parking lot, and I immediately told them about Blackwood's yacht. Within hours, they had a warrant. The raid on Blackwood's yacht that night was all over the news. The list they found contained 112 names. A who's who of East Coast elite who'd contracted murders disguised as natural deaths. By morning, arrests were happening across 6 states. Sarah and I watched from our living room as Senator William Hartley was led away in handcuffs, accused of arranging his mother's death to inherit before election season. Tech billionaire Marcus Webb was arrested at his California office for hiring the network to eliminate his father, who'd threatened to change his will. They're all falling, Sarah said quietly. Every single one of them. Good, I replied, thinking of Thomas. Of all the victims whose deaths were now being revealed as murders. The phone rang. It was Christopher Ashford, calling with unexpected news. Mrs. Sullivan, my mother's estate lawyer, just contacted me. She had a sealed letter to be opened only if her death was proven to be murder. It's addressed to you. An hour later, I sat reading Martha Ashford's letter, written days before her death. Dear Mrs. Sullivan, we've never met, but I know your daughter, Emily. She visited me with her husband, asking questions that made me uncomfortable. I believe I'm in danger. If you're reading this, I'm dead and they killed me. But I want you to know, it's not your fault. Evil children can come from good parents. I've researched your work, your life. You are everything Emily pretended to be. Don't let her crimes diminish your light. Fight them. For all of us who can't. Martha Ashford had known she was going to die and used her last days to investigate her killers. She'd known about me, had tried to warn me in her own way. She was brave, Helen said, reading over my shoulder. They were all brave, I replied, thinking of the victims who'd fought back in small ways, who'd hidden evidence, who'd refused to go quietly into that dark night. That evening, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single key and a note. For Sarah, from someone who remembers what family should mean. DM, Danielle Mitchell, still finding ways to help from witness protection. The key opened a safety deposit box at a small bank in Cambridge. Inside, Sarah and I found something extraordinary. $10,000 in cash and a letter. This money came from my crimes, but I want it to go towards something good. Use it for Sarah's education, for therapy, for whatever helps her heal. I helped destroy your family. This tiny gesture can't fix that, but maybe it can help rebuild. A mother who lost her way, but remembers her daughter's smile. Sarah held the letter, tears streaming. Even the bad people still have some good in them. Sometimes, I said carefully. But good intentions don't erase evil actions. Miss Mitchell is trying to atone, but she still has to face justice for what she did. Like Mom? Yes, sweetheart. Like your mom. The trial preparation intensified as February arrived, but something was troubling me about Sarah. She'd been quiet, spending hours in her room, and I'd caught her crying several times. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, she came to me with a laptop I didn't recognize. Grandma, I need to show you something. Something I've been hiding. My heart sank. What else could there be? Sarah opened the laptop, revealing dozens of video files. I've been recording them for 2 years. Mom and Dad, the
But tell me, what
Colemans,
does family
everyone.
truly mean when they
I started
betray
when
you
I
like
noticed
that?
Mom acting
I
strange
covered
around
for him for
Grandpa.
years. I lied
The
to
first
everyone,
video was
even
dated
myself.
December 23rd,
But tell me,
2
what
years
does
ago,
family truly
2 months
mean when they
before
betray
Thomas
you like
died.
that?
Emily
I
and
covered for
David
him
sat
for
at our
years.
kitchen
I lied
table
to
while
everyone,
Thomas and
even
I were at
myself.
church. Their
But tell me,
conversation
what
was
does family
chilling.
truly mean
The old
when they
man
betray
suspects
you like
something,
that?
David
I
said.
covered for him
He's
for
been asking
years. I
questions
lied
at
to
the bank
everyone,
about
even
trust
myself.
structures. Let him
But tell
ask,
me, what does
Emily
family
replied
truly mean when they
coldly.
betray you
Mitchell
like
says
that?
we can
I
accelerate if
covered for him
needed.
for years.
A little
I lied
extra
to everyone,
digitoxin in
even
his
myself.
coffee, maybe a bad
But tell me,
reaction
what
to his
does
blood
family
pressure
truly mean when they
medication.
betray you
These
like
things
that?
happen to elderly
I
men.
covered for him for years.
They were
I lied
planning
to
Thomas's
everyone,
murder
even
in our
myself.
kitchen, at the
But tell
table
me,
where
what
we'd
does
shared
family
30
truly
years of
mean when they
family
betray
meals.
you like that?
Sarah,
I covered
how
for him
did you
for
record
years. I
this?
lied to
I
everyone,
asked,
even myself.
stunned. Dad gave
But
me a
tell me, what
laptop
does
for
family
school
truly
with
mean
parental
when they betray
monitoring
you like
software.
that?
But
I
it
covered
worked
for him
both
for
ways.
years. I lied to
I could
everyone,
access
even
any
myself.
device on our home
But
network.
tell me, what does
I
family
turned their
truly mean
surveillance
when they
against
betray
them.
you like that?
She clicked another
I
file.
covered for him for years.
This is
I
from
lied to
January
everyone, even
15th,
myself.
3 weeks before
But
Grandpa
tell me, what
died.
does family
The
truly
video
mean
showed
when they
Dr. Mitchell
betray you
meeting
like
with
that?
Emily in our
I
garage.
covered for him for
He handed
years.
her a
I
vial
lied
of
to
clear
everyone,
liquid.
even myself.
10 drops in his morning
But tell
coffee
me,
for
what
3
does
days,
family truly
then
mean when they
15 drops
betray
for
you
3
like that?
more, Mitchell
I covered
instructed.
for him for
By day
years. I
7,
lied to
his
everyone,
heart will
even
be so
myself.
stressed that even mild
But tell me,
exertion will
what does
trigger a
family
fatal
truly mean when they
arrhythmia.
betray you
Completely
like that?
untraceable.
I covered
What
for
about
him
the
for
autopsy?
years. I lied to
Emily
everyone,
asked.
even myself.
What autopsy?
But
A
tell me, what
70-year-old
does
man with a
family
heart
truly
condition
mean when they
dies
betray
suddenly?
you like that?
No one will
I
question
covered
it.
for him for
My
years.
hands
I
shook
lied
as
to
I watched
everyone,
my
even
daughter accept the
myself.
poison that would kill
But
her
tell me,
father.
what does family
But what
truly
came
mean when
next
they
was
betray
even
you like
worse.
that?
Emily
I covered for him
smiled.
for years.
She
I lied
actually
to
smiled
everyone,
while
even
holding
myself.
Thomas's murder weapon.
But tell me,
There's
what does
more,
family
Grandma.
truly mean
So
when they
much
betray you
more.
like that?
Sarah's voice
I
broke.
covered for him for years. I lied
I have
to everyone, even
137
myself.
videos.
But
I
tell me, what
documented
does
everything
family truly
because
mean
I
when they
knew
betray
someday
you like
someone
that?
would need proof.
I covered for him for years. I lied
I
to
was too
everyone,
scared to
even
tell anyone while
myself.
they controlled everything.
But tell me, what
Oh,
does family
sweetheart.
truly mean
I
when
pulled
they
her into
betray
my
you like
arms.
that? I covered for
You
him
were
for
12 years
years. I
old.
lied to everyone, even myself.
You were a child trying to
But
survive
tell
in a
me, what
house
does
of
family
murderers.
truly mean when
But
they
I could have
betray you
saved
like
Grandpa.
that? I covered
No,
for him for
I said
years.
firmly.
I lied to everyone,
They would have
even
killed you
myself.
too, or found
But
another
tell
way.
me, what does family
You did the
truly
only
mean when
thing
they
you could.
betray you like
You
that?
gathered
I
evidence.
covered for him for
Sarah
years.
showed
I
me more
lied to
videos.
everyone, even
The Colemans
myself.
discussing their previous
But tell me, what
victims,
does family
laughing about
truly
an
mean when
elderly
they
woman
betray
who'd
you
begged
like
for her
that?
life.
I covered
David
for him for
demonstrating to
years. I
Emily how to
lied to
forge my
everyone, even
signature.
myself.
Patricia,
But tell me,
practicing
what
her
does
concerned
family
mother-in-law
truly mean when
act
they
in the
betray you
mirror.
like that?
But one video
I
stood
covered for
out,
him for
dated
years.
just
I
1
lied
week
to
before my
everyone, even
surgery.
myself.
Sarah
But
had
tell
hidden
me,
a
what does
camera in my
family truly
bedroom
mean
and
when they
captured
betray you
Emily
like
going
that?
through my jewelry
I
box,
covered for him for
trying on
years. I
pieces
lied
and
to
saying to
everyone,
David,
even myself.
"Soon all this will be
But
mine."
tell me, what does
The
family
jewelry,
truly mean
the
when they
house,
betray you
the
like
respect
that?
that comes with
I
the
covered
Sullivan
for him for
name.
years. I
The
lied to
respect?
everyone, even
David had
myself.
laughed. You mean the
But
teaching
tell me,
awards
what does
gathering
family
dust?
truly mean when they
No,
betray you like
Emily
that?
had replied.
I covered for him for
The respect
years.
of
I
being the
lied to
grieving
everyone,
daughter
even
who tragically
myself.
lost both parents
But tell
but
me, what
bravely
does
carries
family
on their
truly
legacy
mean
while
when they betray you
modernizing
like
their
that?
assets.
I covered
I'll be
for
the
him for
tragic
years. I
heroine who
lied to
turned pain
everyone,
into
even
profit.
myself.
She'd planned to
But
use
tell
our
me, what does
deaths
family
as a
truly
sympathy
mean when they
platform for
betray
her
you like
business
that?
ventures.
I covered
Agent
for him
Chen
for years. I
arrived
lied
within
to
minutes of my
everyone, even
call.
myself.
She watched the videos
But
with
tell me,
growing
what does
excitement.
family truly mean
Sarah,
when they
do you
betray you
understand
like
what
that?
you've done?
I covered
You've
for him for
provided
years. I
irrefutable
lied to
evidence.
everyone, even
With
myself.
this, every single
But tell
person
me, what does
involved will be
family truly
convicted.
mean when they betray
Will I
you
have
like
to
that?
testify?
I covered
Sarah
for him
asked
for
fearfully.
years. I lied to
Yes,
everyone,
but
even
we'll protect
myself.
you. You're the
But tell
hero
me,
of
what
this
does
story,
family
Sarah.
truly mean when
You
they
saved
betray
not
you
just
like
your
that?
grandmother, but
I covered
potentially
for him for
hundreds of
years.
future
I lied to
victims.
everyone, even
As Agent
myself.
Chen copied the
But
files,
tell me,
more
what does
horrifying
family truly
details
mean when
emerged.
they betray you
A
like
video
that?
from last
I
March
covered for
showed
him for
Veronica,
years. I lied to
Patricia's
everyone,
sister,
even
who we
myself.
hadn't even known was
But tell
involved,
me, what does
discussing
family
plans
truly
to
mean when
expand sent to nursing homes. We could clear entire facilities, Veronica said eagerly. 30, 40 victims at once. Create a contamination event that kills the wealthy residents while the poor ones survive. No one would suspect targeted murder. They were planning mass murder in nursing homes. Another video showed Emily teaching David how to manipulate me psychologically. Mother responds to guilt, she explained, like discussing a science experiment. Mention Sarah's future, father's memory, or her former students. She'll sign anything if she thinks she's helping someone. Your mother missed her calling, David had replied. She should have been a psychologist instead of a failed interior designer. Psychology doesn't pay, Emily had answered, but understanding it does. The FBI task force assembled that night included federal prosecutors, state investigators, and even Interpol, apparently. The network had international connections we were only beginning to discover. Sarah's videos were the smoking gun they'd needed. We need to move Sarah to protective custody immediately, Williams announced. Once the defense learns about these recordings, she becomes the biggest target. No, I said firmly. She stays with me. We've been separated enough by Emily's evil. Sarah needs stability, not more trauma. Then we'll need round-the-clock protection for both of you, Agent Chen said. Whatever it takes. That night, as federal agents guarded our house, Sarah and I sat in Thomas's study. She pulled out one more device, a small flash drive on a necklace she'd worn every day for 2 years. This has everything backed up, she explained. I made copies and hid them everywhere. In my school locker, in a tree in the park, even mailed one to myself at a postal box Mom didn't know about. I learned from Grandpa. What do you mean? Sarah smiled sadly. Grandpa taught me about backing up important things. He said, never keep all your treasures in one place, sweetheart. Whether it's love, money, or memories, always have insurance. I think he knew something might happen. My brilliant Thomas, teaching our granddaughter to protect herself even as danger circled our family. There's one more thing, Sarah said quietly. The night Grandpa died, I heard Mom on the phone. She said, it's done. He drank it all. Should be within hours. Grandma, I could have called 911. I could have... Stop, I said firmly, taking her face in my hands. You were 12 years old, terrified, and surrounded by killers. You did the bravest thing imaginable. You survived and collected evidence. Your grandfather would be so proud. As we prepared for bed, Sarah asked, do you think Mom ever loved us? Even a little? I thought about Emily's confession, her admission that she'd chosen cruelty. I think she loved the idea of us, the perfect family that would give her status and wealth. But real love requires sacrifice, putting others first. Your mother could never do that. But you did. You sacrificed everything for her. And look where we are, I said, gesturing around Thomas's study, our home secured by federal agents. My sacrifices kept you safe, preserved this house, and ultimately exposed their evil. Love might not always win immediately, sweetheart, but it leaves evidence. Your videos, Thomas's journal, even Danielle Mitchell's conscience, all born from love. The federal trial began on March 15th, with media trucks lining the streets around the courthouse. Sarah and I entered through an underground parking garage, surrounded by U.S. Marshals who'd been assigned as our protection detail. The lead marshal, Angela Torres, had become oddly maternal towards Sarah over the past month. Stay close, sweetheart, Torres said, her hand protectively on Sarah's shoulder. There are a lot of angry people who lost money in the network. Some blame the whistleblowers instead of the criminals. The courtroom was packed. I recognized faces from the victim support group, Professor Foster, Christopher Ashford, families of those who hadn't survived. Emily sat at the defense table looking gaunt, her orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the expensive suits she once wore. When our eyes met, she mouthed something I couldn't interpret. Prosecutor Williams began with Sarah's videos. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as Emily discussed her father's murder like planning a dinner party. Several jurors wept when they saw her practicing her grieving daughter performance in the mirror the day before Thomas died. But the video that caused the most impact was one Sarah hadn't shown me before. It was from December 20th, just days before that horrible Christmas Eve. Emily sat with David and the Colemans in my living room while I was at the hospital. Patricia held a syringe filled with clear liquid. This is the backup plan, Patricia explained. If Margaret somehow survives the surgery complications, we use this. One injection disguised as insulin or pain medication. She'll have a massive stroke within hours. I don't want her to suffer, Emily said. And for a moment, I thought I heard reluctance. She won't, Patricia assured her. She'll just fade, like going to sleep, much kinder than what happened to the others. Emily nodded. Do it on New Year's Eve if necessary. She always gets sentimental then, drinks champagne. Easy to hide the symptoms. They'd planned multiple ways to kill me, layers upon layers of murder plots. When court recessed for lunch, Helen and I sat in a secure room while Sarah met with the child advocacy counselor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. They were going to inject me with something on New Year's Eve, I said numbly, if I hadn't escaped on Christmas Eve. But you did escape, Helen reminded me firmly. Your instinct to leave the hospital saved your life. When court resumed, the defense began their case. Emily's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Harrison Pike, tried to paint her as a victim of the Coleman's manipulation. Mrs. Coleman was psychologically abused by her husband's family, Pike argued. They groomed her, isolated her from support systems, and threatened her daughter if she didn't comply. Then Emily took the stand. I hadn't expected that. She looked directly at me as she spoke. Everything Mr. Pike said is partly true. The Colemans did manipulate me, but I need everyone to understand something. I was a willing participant. I saw an opportunity to escape the life my parents had given me, and I took it. Her lawyer looked horrified, but Emily continued. My mother sitting there wants to believe I was corrupted, that her perfect parenting couldn't produce a monster. But the truth is, I've always been this way. Even as a child, I resented our middle-class life, resented watching her give away money to charity while I wore second-hand clothes. Mrs. Coleman, her lawyer, interrupted desperately. Perhaps we should... No, I want to tell the truth. I killed my father because he was weak. I tried to kill my mother because she was an obstacle. I traumatized my daughter because maintaining the facade required it. I am not insane. I am not a victim. I am exactly what I chose to become. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Through the chaos, Emily kept her eyes on mine. But here's what Mother doesn't know, she said, raising her voice over the noise. I left her one gift. Check Dad's workshop, behind the loose brick. You'll understand. Court was adjourned in chaos. That evening, with Agent Chen and Sarah beside me, I went to Thomas's workshop in our basement. I hadn't been there since he died. Too painful. Everything remained exactly as he'd left it. Tools arranged precisely, half-finished projects waiting for hands that would never return. Behind the loose brick Emily mentioned, we found a metal box. Inside were two items: Thomas's wedding ring, which Emily had claimed was lost at the funeral home, and a letter in Emily's handwriting dated the day after Thomas died. Dear Mom, by the time you read this, I'll either be in prison or dead. Either way, you'll know the truth. I'm writing this while you sleep upstairs, finally sedated after Dad's funeral. I killed him. I watched him drink the poison I put in his coffee, watched him struggle for breath, watched the light leave his eyes, and in that moment, I felt nothing. That's when I knew I was truly lost. I'm leaving you Dad's ring because even monsters recognize love when they see it. You two had something I'll never understand or deserve. I thought it was weakness. Now I know it was the only strength that matters. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't want it. I want to burn with the knowledge of what I threw away. But know this, in my twisted way, I did love you once. Before the wanting consumed everything, before I chose darkness, there was a moment when I was your daughter. Hold on to that moment if you can. It's the only truth I have left to give. Don't save me, Mom. Save Sarah. She has your heart, not mine. Emily. I sank onto Thomas's workbench, clutching his ring. Sarah read the letter over my shoulder, tears streaming. She knew, Sarah whispered. Even then, she knew what she was. The saddest part, I said, slipping Thomas's ring onto a chain around my neck, is that she chose to continue anyway. She could have stopped after your grandfather, could have confessed, sought help. Instead, she escalated. Agent Chen documented everything for evidence, but I barely noticed. I was thinking about Emily as a baby, how she'd smiled when Thomas sang to her, how she'd clung to me during thunderstorms. When had that frightened child become a killer? The next morning, Emily's confession made national headlines. Daughter admits to killing father, attempting to murder mother for inheritance. But the trial continued. The defense, desperate now, brought in psychiatrists who testified about antisocial personality disorder, about nature versus nurture, about the possibility of rehabilitation. If this moment truly hit home for you, don't forget to tap that like button. It tells me you're right here with me. Can you see a bit of yourself in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what part spoke to you most. Doctor. Patricia Hendricks, a forensic psychiatrist, testified that Emily showed signs of psychopathy from childhood. The defendant's journals from age 12 show disturbing patterns, lack of empathy, manipulation of peers, fantasies about wealth and power. This preceded any Coleman influence. They'd subpoenaed Emily's childhood diaries. I hadn't even known she kept them. Hearing excerpts read aloud was devastating. At 13, she'd written, "Mom gave $20 to the homeless shelter instead of buying me the jeans I wanted. Sometimes I wish she'd just disappear so I could have what I deserve." The defendant was born without the capacity for genuine empathy, Dr. Hendricks concluded. The Colemans simply gave her permission and methodology to act on existing desires. During the defense's closing arguments, Pike made one last attempt. "Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Coleman is guilty. She admits it. But she's also a victim of her own broken psychology, raised by parents who couldn't see the warning signs." Objection. Williams stood. Counsel is victim blaming. Sustained. The judge ruled firmly. But the damage was done. Some jurors looked at me with curiosity, wondering what I'd missed, how I'd failed. The truth was simpler and more painful. You can't save someone who doesn't want salvation. The jury deliberated for 3 days. During that time, Sarah and I stayed at a safe house the FBI had arranged, unable to return home due to death threats from network associates still at large. On the third night, Marshal Torres knocked on our door at 10 p.m. Verdict's in. Court reconvenes at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sarah. We sat in the small living room, looking through photo albums I'd managed to save from the house, the ones Barbara had rescued from the dumpster. "Look," Sarah pointed to a picture of Emily at her college graduation. "You both look so happy." We did. Emily beamed in her cap and gown while Thomas and I flanked her, proud parents who'd scrimped and saved for that moment. Less than 2 years later, she'd begin planning Thomas's murder. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman stood. On the count of murder in the first degree for the death of Thomas Sullivan, we find the defendant, Emily Coleman, guilty. The guilty verdicts continued: attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, 43 counts in total. Each guilty felt like another brick in the wall between the daughter I'd loved and the stranger who tried to destroy me. Emily showed no emotion until the judge spoke. "Emily Coleman, you are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, sentences to run consecutively. You will die in prison, as your victims died, separated from those who might have loved them." "No!" Emily finally cracked, turning to me. "Mother, please, tell them I'm sick. Tell them about my childhood. You can't let them do this." I stood slowly, meeting her eyes across the courtroom. "I already lost my daughter, Emily. She died the day she chose to poison her father. You're just the shell that remains." As they led her away, Emily screamed something that chilled me. "Sarah's just like me. She'll turn on you too. Blood always tells." Sarah gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. "I'm nothing like her," she whispered fiercely. "I know, sweetheart. You have your grandfather's heart." The other trials proceeded quickly after Emily's conviction. Dr. Mitchell received the death penalty for his 47 murders. The Colemans each got life sentences. Jonathan Blackwood, despite his cooperation, would serve 25 years, effectively a death sentence at his age. But the wider network continued unraveling. Sarah's videos led to 372 arrests nationwide. The FBI discovered similar operations in Europe and Asia, all connected through Blackwood's international contacts. On a cold April morning, we finally returned home. The FBI had released the house from evidence, and Barbara had organized a cleaning crew from our church. But standing in the doorway, I couldn't move. "It doesn't feel like home anymore," I admitted to Helen, who'd accompanied us. "Then we make it home again," Sarah said with determination that reminded me of Thomas. "We fill it with new memories, good ones." She was right. We spent the next month transforming the house, not erasing the past, but reclaiming our present. Sarah's art covered the walls where family photos once hung. We converted Emily's old room into a library, filling it with Thomas's books we'd recovered. The dining room where murder was planned became Sarah's music room. She'd started learning piano, saying it helped her process everything. One evening in May, as Sarah practiced a Mozart sonata Thomas had loved, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw someone unexpected, Danielle Mitchell, no longer in witness protection. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said when I opened the door, "but I needed to tell you in person. I testified against my husband today, gave them everything. He'll never hurt anyone again." She looked different, older, worn down by guilt, but somehow clearer. "I also wanted to give you this." She handed me a flash drive. It's everything James documented about victims who might still be alive in institutions. 23 people who could potentially be rescued. 23 souls who might still be saved. "Why?" I asked. "Because your daughter was right about one thing. Blood does tell. My daughter deserves a mother who chose redemption, even if it came too late. Just like Sarah deserves to know that not everyone who falls stays fallen." After she left, Sarah asked, "Do you think people can really change?" "I think they can choose to be better than they were," I replied carefully. "But change requires admitting fault, making amends, and accepting consequences. Emily never could do that." The flash drive led to a massive investigation of care facilities. 17 elderly people were found wrongly institutionalized, still competent but drugged into compliance. Their reunions with families made national news, bittersweet victories in an ocean of loss. One was Professor Foster's colleague, Dr. Harrison Wade, who'd been declared incompetent after refusing to sell his Cambridge mansion. When they brought him to visit us, his first words were, "Margaret Sullivan, you're the woman who brought down an empire. Thomas would be so proud." That night, I found Sarah in Thomas's workshop, where we discovered Emily's confession. She was working on something, a wooden box, carefully carved. "It's for the music box," she explained. "A new base to replace the broken one. See, I'm carving our family tree. But I'm leaving Emily's branch blank. She can be part of our history without defining our future." My wise, resilient granddaughter. She'd survived her parents' evil and emerged with her compassion intact. "Grandma," Sarah asked as we worked together, sanding the wood smooth, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom had made different choices?" "Every day," I admitted. "But dwelling on what ifs won't change what is. We can only move forward." With the people who choose love over greed? Exactly. As spring turned to summer, our support group grew. Victims and their families met weekly in our living room, sharing stories, offering comfort, fighting for stronger elder protection laws. We transformed our pain into purpose. One July evening, as Sarah played piano for the group, I noticed something remarkable. The house felt warm again, filled with laughter, tears, and shared humanity. Emily and the Colemans had tried to steal this space, to turn it into something cold and profitable. Instead, their evil had inadvertently created a sanctuary for healing. "Thomas," I whispered to his portrait, "we survived. Sarah and I were going to be okay." The music box, now repaired with Sarah's carved bass, sat on the mantel. Sometimes I wound it, letting Silent Night play in the middle of summer. It no longer sounded like a Christmas carol or even a lament. It sounded like what it truly was, a promise that even the darkest night's end, that morning always comes, and that love leaves evidence even death cannot erase. August brought an unexpected heat wave to Boston, and with it, a letter that would change everything once more. It arrived at the law offices of Morrison and Associates, addressed to Helen in her capacity as trustee. She brought it to our house that evening, her expression unreadable. "Margaret, Sarah, you need to sit down for this," Helen said, placing an official-looking document on our kitchen table. "This is from the estate lawyers of Thomas's grandfather, William Sullivan. Apparently, there's been a trust fund we never knew about." "That's impossible," I said. "Thomas handled all his grandfather's affairs when he passed in 1995. "Not all of them," Helen replied. "William Sullivan created a secret trust in 1972, specifically designed to skip 2 generations. It was held by a law firm in Switzerland, with instructions to reveal its existence only if certain conditions were met." Sarah leaned forward. "What conditions?" "If any descendant attempted to steal the family home or harm another family member for inheritance, Helen's voice was grave. William apparently witnessed similar family destruction during the Depression. He called this his insurance against greed. I took the document with trembling hands. The trust contained $10 million, accumulated over 50 years of careful investment. But the conditions for access were specific. The funds could only be used for education, medical care, and maintaining the family home. Any attempt to liquidate for personal gain would forfeit everything to charity. Emily never knew, I whispered. She killed Thomas for $3 million when there was $10 million she could never touch. It gets more interesting, Helen continued. The Swiss lawyers have been monitoring the situation. They have records showing they contacted Thomas 6 months before his death, warning him that unusual inquiries had been made about the Sullivan family assets. Thomas never told you? I thought back to those final months, Thomas's increased anxiety, his insistence on updating his will. He was protecting me from the worry. He knew something was wrong but didn't want to burden me. There's more, Helen said, pulling out another document. The trust includes letters William wrote to future generations. This one is addressed to, and I quote, the Sullivan who stands against the vultures. I opened the yellowed envelope carefully. William Sullivan's bold handwriting filled the page. To my descendant who reads this, know that you are not the first to face family betrayal over money. In 1932, my own brother tried to steal our family farm during the Depression, leaving our parents homeless. I stopped him, but I learned that greed can poison any bloodline. This trust is my gift to you, not just money, but validation. You chose family over fortune, love over lucre. The funds herein should shield you from further predators and ensure the family home remains a sanctuary, not a commodity. Remember, wealth is meaningless without wisdom, and family is defined by loyalty, not blood. Guard what matters. Let the greedy inherit the wind. William Sullivan, written this day, December 24, 1972. December 24, Christmas Eve. 52 years before Emily would try to destroy everything on that same date. The timing can't be coincidence, Sarah said quietly. The Swiss lawyers don't think so either, Helen replied. They've been tracking the Coleman network for years. They believe someone leaked information about various family trusts to create target lists. They're cooperating with international authorities to uncover the source. The doorbell interrupted us. It was Agent Chen with 2 other FBI agents and someone I didn't recognize, a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Director Michael Brennan from the Office for Victims of Crime, Agent Chen introduced. He has a proposal for you. Director Brennan shook my hand warmly. Mrs. Sullivan, your case has become a watershed moment for elder justice in America. Congress is preparing to pass the Thomas Sullivan Elder Protection Act, but we need a face for this movement. We need you. I'm just a retired teacher, I protested. You're a survivor who brought down a nationwide criminal network, he corrected. Your granddaughter's evidence has saved hundreds of lives. Your story has inspired thousands of elderly Americans to check their own financial safety. We're asking you to head a new national task force on elder fraud prevention. Sarah squeezed my hand. Grandma, you could save so many people. I thought of Thomas, of Martha Ashford, of all the victims who hadn't survived. What would this involve? Training law enforcement, speaking to senior communities, working with Congress on legislation. We've secured funding for a full staff and office here in Boston. You'd be compensated, of course, and Sarah would have full security protection until she turns 18. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was the federal prison. Emily calling again. I should take this, I said, stepping into the hallway. Hello, Mother. Emily's voice was different, older, wearier. I heard about great-grandfather's trust. Ironic, isn't it? I destroyed everything for money that was already ours. It was never about the money for you, Emily. It was about taking what you thought you deserved. You're right, she admitted. I've had months to think in here. Do you know what I've realized? I spent so much time hating your contentment that I never learned to find my own. I mistook wanting for ambition, cruelty for strength. Why are you telling me this? Because Sarah needs to know she's nothing like me. I heard what I screamed at the trial. It was a lie, Mother. Sarah has something I never had, the ability to love without calculating its worth. That came from you and Dad, not from me. Emily, I'm being transferred to maximum security tomorrow. This is my last call. I won't contact you again. Let Sarah grow up without my shadow. Use great-grandfather's money to give her the life I tried to steal. And Mother, thank you for surviving. If I had succeeded in killing you, Sarah would have been next. The Colemans had plans for her trust fund. The line went dead. My daughter's final act, warning me about yet another horror Sarah had escaped. I returned to find everyone waiting. I'll do it, I told Director Brennan. I'll head the task force, but I have conditions. Sarah is my co-founder. Her perspective as a young survivor is invaluable. And we operate from Thomas's study in this house. This is where the network fell. This is where the healing should begin. Agreed, Brennan said immediately. That night, Sarah and I stood in Thomas's study, now being transformed into the headquarters of the National Elder Justice Initiative. On the wall, we hung 3 photos. Thomas representing the victims, Emily's mugshot representing the consequences of greed, and William Sullivan representing the foresight to protect future generations. Great-great-grandfather William would be proud, Sarah said. He set a trap for greed that took 50 years to spring. He did more than that, I replied, reading his letter again. He reminded us that family isn't about blood or money. It's about choosing love over greed every single day. The music box sat on Thomas's desk, restored and polished. Sarah wound it, and silent night filled the room. But now I heard it as William might have intended. A Christmas Eve promise that light defeats darkness, that good triumphs over evil, even if it takes generations. We're going to save them all, aren't we, Grandma? Sarah asked. Everyone the vultures are circling? We're going to try, I promised. With $10 million, federal backing, and the truth on our side, we're going to try. September brought a whirlwind of activity as the National Elder Justice Initiative took shape in Thomas's former study. Federal contractors installed secure communication systems while Sarah and I worked to preserve the room's soul, keeping Thomas's handcrafted bookshelves, his leather chair, the window overlooking the garden he'd loved. Director Brennan arrived with our first assignment, investigating a cluster of suspicious deaths at luxury retirement communities across New England. 7 elderly residents had died within 6 months, all after recently updating their wills. The facilities are all owned by different companies, Brennan explained, spreading files across Thomas's desk. But our forensic accountants found something interesting. They all trace back to offshore accounts connected to remnants of the Coleman network. They're still operating? Sarah asked, her voice tight with anger. Different players. Same playbook, Agent Chen confirmed. She'd been assigned as our permanent liaison. With Blackwood and the Colemans imprisoned, lower-level operatives are trying to fill the vacuum. I studied the victims' photos, all widowed, all wealthy, all had died within weeks of moving into these facilities. One face stopped me cold. Dorothy Harrison, my former colleague from Lincoln Elementary. She'd retired 5 years ago with a substantial pension and no living relatives. I knew Dorothy, I said quietly. She was terrified of ending up alone in a nursing home. She used to say she'd rather die in her own home than be warehoused somewhere. According to records, she voluntarily entered Sunset Gardens in Worcester last November, Chen said. Died of heart failure in January. Dorothy was healthy as a horse, I protested. She ran marathons until she was 70. Sarah was already pulling up Sunset Gardens' website on her laptop. Look at this, Grandma. Their board of directors, Dr. Carl Mitchell, is listed as medical advisor. Carl Mitchell, James Mitchell's brother, supposedly serving time in Vermont. How was he on a board of directors? Helen, who'd been quietly reviewing legal documents, looked up sharply. This is impossible. Carl Mitchell is in federal prison. I verified it myself during Emily's trial. Unless he's not, I said, a terrible suspicion forming. Agent Chen, can you confirm Carl Mitchell's current location? Within an hour, we had our answer. Carl Mitchell had been released on a technicality 3 months ago, a paperwork error in his original arrest warrant. He'd immediately disappeared, and no one had thought to update our team. He's rebuilding, I said with certainty, using what he learned from his brother and the Colemans to create his own network. Director Brennan stood. Then we stop him before more people die. Margaret, I'm authorizing a full federal investigation. You'll lead the civilian oversight team. I want to visit Sunset Gardens, I said, undercover, as a potential resident. Everyone protested immediately, but I held firm. I'm 72, recently widowed, with documented health issues. I'm exactly their target demographic, and I know what to look for now. Absolutely not, Sarah said, grabbing my hand. Grandma, these people are killers. You barely survived the last time. Which is why I know their methods, I countered. Besides, I won't really check in. Just tour the facility, ask questions, gather intelligence. After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. I would visit Sunset Gardens, but with full surveillance, hidden cameras, constant FBI monitoring, and Sarah stationed in a van outside with Agent Chen. 3 days later, I stood in Sunset Gardens' opulent lobby, playing the part of a lonely widow considering her options. The receptionist, a young woman with a practiced smile, greeted me warmly. Mrs. Sullivan, we've been expecting you. I'm Jennifer. Dr. Mitchell is very eager to meet you personally. My blood chilled, but I maintained my facade. Dr. Mitchell? How wonderful. I do like when facilities have hands-on medical directors. Carl Mitchell appeared within minutes, thin, graying, with the same cold eyes as his brother, but better at hiding them behind false warmth. He didn't recognize me from the trial coverage, probably because I'd aged considerably from the stress. Mrs. Sullivan, welcome. I understand you're considering joining our community. May I ask what brings you to this decision? I'd rehearsed this with Sarah. My daughter lives in California now. She worries about me being alone in that big house. And frankly, since my husband passed, it's been too quiet. Children do worry, he said sympathetically, though I notice your application mentions significant assets. No doubt your daughter is also concerned about properly managing your estate. There it was, the first probe about money. Oh, Emily's very successful on her own, I lied smoothly. She doesn't need my money. Though I suppose everyone always wants to ensure their inheritance is secure. Mitchell's eyes sharpened with interest. Emily, you said? In California? San Diego. She's in tech. Every lie carefully crafted to be unverifiable but plausible. He led me on a tour, each room more luxurious than the last. But I noticed things others might miss. Security cameras in residence rooms pointing at beds, not doors, medicine carts left unattended. A disturbing number of residents who seemed overly sedated for the middle of the day. This is our special care wing, Mitchell explained, using a keycard to access a locked corridor for residents who need additional attention. Through doorways, I glimpsed elderly people in beds, barely conscious. One woman met my eyes for a moment, and I saw terror there before a nurse quickly closed the door. They seem very quiet, I observed carefully. Proper medication management ensures everyone's comfort, Mitchell replied. We believe in a peaceful environment. Peaceful. Drugged into silence, more likely. In his office, Mitchell presented paperwork that made my stomach turn. Power of attorney documents, asset transfer authorizations, living wills that gave the facility complete control over medical decisions. Standard forms, he assured me, for your protection. I'll need my lawyer to review these, I said, taking copies. His smile tightened slightly. Of course. Though I should mention we have very limited availability. If you're interested, we'd need commitment within the week. The pressure tactic. Create urgency, prevent careful consideration. As I prepared to leave, Mitchell made his crucial mistake. You know, Mrs. Sullivan, you remind me of another resident we had, Dorothy Harrison. Such a lovely woman. Oh? What happened to her? Sadly, she passed. Heart failure. But she died peacefully, surrounded by caring staff. The way we all hoped to go. I saw the truth in his satisfied smile. Dorothy hadn't died peacefully. She'd been murdered, just like the others. Outside, I maintained my composure until we were safely in the FBI van. Then I broke down, thinking of Dorothy alone and frightened, knowing something was wrong but unable to escape. We got it all, Agent Chen assured me, reviewing the surveillance footage. His questions about assets, the drugged residents, the pressure tactics. This is enough for a warrant. It's not enough, I said firmly. We need to catch him in the act. And I know exactly how to do it. Sarah looked at me with growing alarm. Grandma, what are you planning? I'm going to check in, I said. For real this time. With FBI protection, but as an actual resident, it's the only way to save whoever's in that locked wing. The room erupted in protests, but I held up my hand. Dorothy Harrison died alone and afraid. How many others are in there right now, waiting for rescue? I won't let them wait any longer. If this scene touched your heart, tap like to let me know it resonated with you. Do you see a glimpse of your own story in theirs? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The FBI operation at Sunset Gardens took 3 weeks to organize. During that time, Sarah and I worked tirelessly to establish the National Elder Justice Initiative's protocols while secretly preparing for my undercover mission. But Director Brennan had other ideas. Margaret, I can't authorize a 72-year-old civilian going undercover in a facility run by suspected murderers, he said firmly during our morning briefing. However, we have a better plan. Agent Chen unveiled a detailed operation. We're sending in Agent Patricia Williams, 58, posing as early-onset dementia patient. She's trained in undercover work and can handle herself if things go wrong. You'll monitor from our command center. I wanted to protest but recognized the wisdom. What about the residents currently trapped there? We've identified 14 potential victims in immediate danger, Chen replied. Our priority is extracting them safely while building an airtight case against Carl Mitchell. Sarah had been unusually quiet, working on her laptop. Grandma, look at this. I've been analyzing facility records from Dorothy Harrison's stay. Her medication logs show massive doses of haloperidol and lorazepam, enough to cause severe disorientation. They were making her appear demented, I realized, so no one would believe her if she tried to get help. The first phase of the operation began October 1st. Agent Williams, playing Patricia Morse, checked into Sunset Gardens with hidden cameras in her jewelry and clothing. Sarah and I watched from the FBI command center as she was admitted. Carl Mitchell personally greeted her, his predatory interest obvious when Patricia mentioned her late husband's tech fortune and lack of children. No family at all? Mitchell asked, barely concealing his excitement. Just a nephew in Seattle who hasn't spoken to me in years, Williams replied, playing her part perfectly. I suppose the state will get everything when I go. Well, we can help you make better arrangements, Mitchell suggested smoothly. Many of our residents choose to leave legacies to charitable causes, or to facilities that cared for them. There it was, the first hook. Over the next week, Williams documented systematic abuse. Residents were over-medicated, isolated from outside contact, and pressured to sign financial documents while drugged. She managed to slip notes to 3 residents, letting them know help was coming. Then something unexpected happened. One of the residents, 90-year-old Robert Chen, managed to approach Williams during a brief moment when nurses were distracted. "You're not really sick, are you?" he whispered urgently. "You're here to help?" Williams couldn't break cover but nodded slightly. "Third floor, room 312, Chen whispered. She's been screaming for help for months, but they keep her so drugged. She says her name is Sullivan. Sullivan, my maiden name. That's impossible, I breathed, watching the feed. There are no other Sullivans in my family. But something nagged at me. Helen pulled up genealogy records while Williams found an excuse to investigate the third floor. Room 312 was locked, requiring special authorization. Through the door window, Williams glimpsed an elderly woman, heavily sedated, restrained to her bed. "Can you get facial recognition?" Chen asked the tech team. When the image cleared, Helen gasped. "Margaret, that's your cousin Ruth Sullivan Peterson. She disappeared 2 years ago. Her children said she moved to Florida." Ruth. I hadn't seen her in over a decade after a family dispute about my grandmother's estate. But she was family, and she was trapped in that hellhole. "We're going in tonight," Director Brennan decided. "We have enough evidence, and now we have a kidnapping victim." The raid on Sunset Gardens happened at 3 a.m. on October 9th. FBI agents, state police, and emergency medical personnel descended on the facility. Sarah and I watched from the command center as they breached the locked wing. The scenes that emerged were horrifying. 14 elderly residents, all wealthy, all without close family monitoring them, drugged into near comas. Ruth was among them, barely conscious but alive. Carl Mitchell was arrested in his office, attempting to destroy files. But the FBI tech team recovered everything: financial records, medication logs, and most damning, recordings Mitchell had made of himself discussing his harvest strategy with unknown associates. The old woman in 312 has another 3 months of useful life, Mitchell was heard saying on one recording. Her estate is worth $4 million. We need to accelerate the will changes before she becomes too obviously impaired. At the hospital, I sat beside Ruth's bed as she slowly emerged from months of forced sedation. When she recognized me, tears streamed down her face. Margaret, is it really you? They said I had no family left. They said everyone had abandoned me. Never, I said firmly, holding her frail hand. Family doesn't abandon family, no matter what disputes we've had. Ruth's story emerged in fragments. Her children had been told she had severe dementia and needed specialized care. They'd been shown forged medical documents and prevented from visiting due to her violent episodes. They'd been paying $40,000 a month to Sunset Gardens, believing they were providing the best care. My son James tried to visit, Ruth whispered. They told him I didn't recognize anyone anymore, that seeing him would traumatize me. Margaret, I've been screaming for my children for 2 years. The cruelty of it, children kept from their mother, a mother told her children had abandoned her, was almost unbearable. When Ruth's children arrived from Florida, the reunion was devastating. James, a successful architect, broke down completely when Ruth recognized him immediately. Mom, they showed us videos of you attacking nurses, not recognizing us. We thought you were gone. The videos were staged, Agent Chen explained. They drugged residents into confusion, filmed their distress, then used it as evidence of dementia. 13 other families had similar reunions that week. Of the 14 residents rescued, 11 recovered enough to return home. 3 had been damaged too severely by prolonged drugging and required ongoing care. Carl Mitchell was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. During his interrogation, he revealed something chilling. You think you've won? There are dozens of us, hundreds. Every luxury care facility in New England has at least one of our people. The Coleman Network was just the beginning. He's lying, Chen assured us, trying to create fear. But I wasn't sure. The ease with which they'd operated, the number of facilities involved, suggested something systemic. That evening, as Sarah and I prepared dinner at home, she asked, "How many Ruth Petersons are out there? How many people are trapped, thinking their families abandoned them?" "Too many," I admitted. "But we're going to find them all." The National Elder Justice Initiative's work had truly begun. Within days, we received over 300 calls from families suspicious about their elderly relatives' care. Each would be investigated. "Thomas would be proud," Helen said, visiting that evening. "You've turned your tragedy into a nationwide rescue mission." I thought of Thomas, of how he'd fought to protect me even knowing he would die. His sacrifice had started an avalanche that was now saving hundreds. "We're not done," I said, looking at the map we'd created marking suspicious facilities. Carl Mitchell said the Coleman Network was just the beginning. I believe him. This is bigger than we imagined. The revelation about Carl Mitchell's network triggered a nationwide investigation that October. The FBI established task forces in 12 states, and our small initiative headquarters in Thomas's study became the nerve center for coordinating rescue operations. But the emotional toll was crushing. Sarah found me one morning slumped over the desk, surrounded by photos of victims who hadn't survived. I'd been up all night reading their stories, trying to understand how the system had failed so catastrophically. "Grandma, you can't save them all," Sarah said gently, making me tea. "Especially not the ones who are already gone." "But I should have seen it sooner," I said, voice raw from exhaustion. "If I'd recognized what Emily was becoming, if I'd investigated Thomas's death immediately, then you'd be dead too," Sarah interrupted firmly. "And hundreds of people currently being rescued would still be trapped." "Grandma, your survival is the only reason this network is being exposed." That afternoon brought unexpected news. Emily had been attacked in prison by another inmate, the daughter of one of the Coleman Network's victims. She was in critical condition. "Do you want to go see her?" Helen asked carefully. I sat with that question for hours. Emily had murdered Thomas, tried to kill me, traumatized Sarah. But she was also the baby I'd held. The child I'd raised, the daughter I'd loved before, greed consumed her soul. No, I finally decided. The Emily I would visit died years ago. This is just consequences catching up with a stranger who wore my daughter's face. But Sarah surprised me. I want to go, she said quietly. I need to see her one last time, to tell her something. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We drove to the federal medical facility where Emily was being treated, surrounded by FBI protection. The woman in the hospital bed bore little resemblance to my daughter. Skeletal, scarred, breathing through a ventilator. Sarah stood at the foot of the bed and spoke clearly. You were my mother for 16 years. You taught me piano, helped with homework, made Halloween costumes. Somewhere in all your evil, those moments were real. I'm choosing to remember those and forget the rest. Not for you, but for me. Because holding on to hatred would make me like you, and I refuse to let that happen. Emily's eyes flickered open, focusing on Sarah with what might have been surprise or regret. We'd never know. She died 3 hours later without regaining consciousness. The funeral was small, just Sarah, Helen, Barbara, and me. No media, no spectators. We buried Emily next to Thomas, not because she deserved to rest beside him, but because Sarah needed somewhere to grieve the mother she'd wished for, rather than the one she'd had. I feel guilty, Sarah admitted afterward. Part of me is relieved she's gone. Does that make me terrible? It makes you human, I assured her. Relief that a source of pain is gone doesn't mean you're glad someone died. It means you're ready to heal. The investigation continued to expand. By November, over 800 elderly victims had been identified nationwide. The network had operated for 25 years, stealing an estimated $3 billion and causing at least 200 deaths. Ruth Peterson, recovering in a rehabilitation facility, became our most powerful advocate. Her testimony before Congress in early December was devastating. I was imprisoned for 2 years, she told the Senate Special Committee on Aging. Drugged, restrained, told my children had abandoned me. My captors stole my freedom, my dignity, and nearly my life. This isn't just fraud, it's torture. It's kidnapping. It's attempted murder hidden behind medical degrees and warm smiles. Her son James had started a foundation matching families with missing elderly relatives to unidentified patients in facilities. Within weeks, they'd reunited 43 families. One evening in mid-December, as Boston prepared for Christmas, Director Brennan visited with news. Congress passed the Thomas Sullivan Elder Protection Act unanimously. It includes mandatory federal oversight of all elder care facilities, stricter licensing requirements, and a national database tracking elderly residents. Thomas's name attached to legislation that would save thousands. He would have been embarrassed by the attention but proud of the outcome. There's more, Brennan continued. The president wants to award you and Sarah the Presidential Citizens Medal, a ceremony at the White House in January. Sarah's eyes widened. The White House? You've earned it, Brennan said. Your evidence brought down the largest elder abuse network in history. That night, we decorated our Christmas tree for the first time since Thomas died. Each ornament carried memories, some painful now, like the angel Emily had made in 3rd grade. But we hung them all, acknowledging our whole history, not just the parts we wish to remember. If this part touched something deep inside you, hit that like button so I know it reached you. Do you see your own reflection in this character's journey? Tell me in the comments your story might just inspire someone else. Barbara arrived with her famous sugar cookies and news from the neighborhood. The Chen family is organizing a Christmas Eve vigil for all the victims. They want to hold it on your front lawn, if you're comfortable with that. Christmas Eve. 1 year since Emily had locked me out in the snow, starting this entire journey. Yes, I said without hesitation. Let them come. On Christmas Eve, over 200 people gathered on our lawn. Families of victims, survivors, FBI agents who'd worked the cases, neighbors who'd stood guard when the Colemans tried to demolish our house. Each held a candle, creating a sea of light in the darkness. Ruth Peterson, still using a walker but determined, stood beside me. Last Christmas, I was drugged in that hellhole, believing I'd die alone. This Christmas, I'm surrounded by family and friends. You saved my life, Margaret. We saved each other, I corrected, thinking of all the ways this community had rallied. Father O'Brien led a prayer for the departed, naming each victim we'd identified. When he reached Thomas Sullivan, Sarah squeezed my hand tightly. Thomas knew, Father O'Brien said afterward, privately. In his final confession, he told me evil was circling his family. He said love would be the evidence that brought justice. He was right. As midnight approached, Sarah sat at the piano we'd moved near the window and began playing Silent Night. Her clear voice carried through the open window to the crowd outside. One by one, others joined in until hundreds of voices filled the night. I thought about Emily, dead and buried. The Colemans and Mitchell brothers facing life in prison. Jonathan Blackwood cooperating desperately to avoid execution. The network shattered, its victims freed or at peace. We won, Grandma, Sarah whispered as the song ended. No, I corrected gently. We survived, we exposed evil, we saved lives. But victory would mean none of this ever happened. Victory would be Thomas alive, Emily uncorrupted, you growing up in a normal family. Then what do we call this? I looked at the crowd dispersing, families heading home to warm houses and Christmas mornings, Ruth Peterson hugging her children, FBI agents who'd become friends, Barbara fussing over everyone like a mother hen. We call it justice, I said finally. Imperfect, incomplete, but real justice. And sometimes that's the best we can hope for. The music box, our restored symbol of survival, sat on the mantel playing its eternal melody. Not just Silent Night anymore, but a song of resilience, of love leaving evidence, of good people standing against evil, even when it costs everything. Merry Christmas, Thomas, I whispered to his portrait. We made it through the night. The new year brought unexpected challenges to our rebuilt life. 2 years had passed since that terrible Christmas Eve when Emily locked me out, and now as Christmas approached again, Sarah and I faced our biggest test yet. The doorbell rang on December 20th. And standing there was someone I never expected to see again. David Coleman, Emily's husband, released early on a technicality. Get off my property, I said immediately, my hand reaching for the panic button Agent Chen had installed. Please, Mrs. Sullivan, just 5 minutes, David begged, and something in his appearance stopped me. Gone was the arrogant son-in-law who'd blocked my door. This man looked broken, aged 20 years and 2, his expensive suit replaced with worn clothes, his eyes hollow with genuine remorse. You have 2 minutes, I said, not opening the door wider. Sarah is upstairs. If you've come to hurt us, I've come to return something, he interrupted, pulling out a small wrapped package. And to tell you the truth about Emily, the whole truth. Against every instinct, I let him speak from the doorstep while I stood protected behind the security door. Emily wasn't corrupted by my family, David said, his voice cracking. She corrupted us. The whole scheme, killing Thomas, targeting you, it was all her idea. She approached my parents with a business proposal when she learned about their past frauds. She designed everything, even coached my mother on how to act. You're lying to reduce your sentence, I accused. I'm already serving life without parole, David replied. I have nothing to gain. But Sarah deserves to know her mother was the architect, not the victim. And this belongs to you. He held up the package. Through the security glass, I could see it was small, rectangular, familiar somehow. It's Thomas's journal from his Navy days, David explained. Emily kept it hidden, said it contained things that would hurt you. But I read it in prison, and it's full of love letters he never sent, poems about building a life with you. She kept it to hurt you with later, to prove even Thomas had secrets. But they weren't dark secrets. They were beautiful thoughts he was too shy to share. I opened the door just enough to take the journal, my hands trembling as I recognized Thomas's youthful handwriting. There's one entry you need to see, David said urgently. December 24th, 1979. He wrote about a dream where his future daughter would betray everything he built, but his granddaughter would restore it all. He wrote that love would leave evidence across generations. I flipped to the entry, reading Thomas's words from 45 years ago. Strange dream last night. I saw myself old, dying, but somehow peaceful. Margaret was in danger from someone who should have protected her, but a young girl with Sarah's name, why Sarah, would stand against the darkness. Love leaves evidence, the dream voice said. Every kindness, every sacrifice creates ripples across time. Evil may win battles, but good wins the war because it teaches, it spreads knowledge, it plants seeds of education in young hearts. This dream felt more like prophecy than fantasy. Perhaps I should write it down, leave evidence of my own. He knew, I whispered. Somehow, Thomas knew. The Bai here, David said, using the Vietnamese phrase oddly, is that some people are born with gifts of sight, of knowing. Thomas had keen thought beyond normal understanding. He prepared protections decades before they were needed. Why are you really here? I demanded. Because in prison, I've had time for Giao Dirk of the soul, David replied. I learned that Emily targeted me too. She knew my family's crimes, researched us for years before accidentally meeting me. We thought we were predators, but we were her prey. The Bai I learned too late is that evil can wear beautiful faces and speak lovely words. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, having heard everything. You killed my grandfather, she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. You tried to kill my grandmother. No amount of truth-telling changes that. You're right, David acknowledged, but you deserve the complete keen thought of what happened. Your mother kept recordings of everything. She was building blackmail material on all of us. The FBI has them now, but there's one they don't know about. She recorded herself practicing her reaction to Thomas's death, rehearsing her tears, perfecting her grief. She wanted to win an Oscar for her performance as the bereaved daughter. The cruelty of it, practicing grief for a father she was about to murder, made me physically ill. Where is this recording? Agent Chen asked, having arrived during the conversation. Safety deposit box in Providence. Emily opened it under a false name, box number 743. The key is hidden in her high school yearbook, page 87, behind her senior photo. She wrote there, by graduation, I'll be free of them all. Chen immediately made calls to secure the evidence, but I focused on David, seeing something I hadn't expected, genuine remorse. The greatest Bai I can offer, David continued, is that greed is a disease that destroys the greedy first. We thought we were stealing wealth, but we were losing our souls. The keen thought came too late for me, but Sarah still has time to learn from our failures. What do you want? I asked directly. Nothing. I'm going back to prison after this. I negotiated 1 day of supervised release to return that journal and tell you the truth. The Giao Dirk programs in prison taught me that confession without expectation of forgiveness is the only real repentance. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to have the complete truth. As the marshals arrived to take David back to prison, he looked at Sarah one last time. Your grandmother's love saved you. That's the real inheritance. Not money or houses, but the keen thought of how to love without conditions. That's the Giao Dirk that matters. After he left, Sarah and I sat with Thomas's naval journal, reading his young dreams and hopes. One entry stood out. The Bai of war is that evil exists, but good persists. Knowledge and education, real Giao Dirk of the heart, these are the weapons against darkness. If I have children, I hope to give them this keen thought, that love is not weakness but strength, that kindness is not foolishness but wisdom, that every good deed plants seeds for forests of future good. He was writing to us, Sarah said softly. Across all these years, he was writing to us. That evening, as snow began to fall, we decided to do something unprecedented. We invited the families of all the victims to our home for Christmas Eve, not for mourning, but for celebration of lives lived and justice served. Ruth Peterson arrived first, walking now without assistance. Margaret, this year I know where I am, who I am, and that I'm loved. That's the greatest gift. Christopher Ashford brought his mother's famous cookies, recreated from her recipe. She would have wanted to feed everyone, he said. That was her Bai feed bodies and souls with equal generosity. Even Danielle Mitchell came, still under witness protection but allowed this one evening. I know I don't deserve to be here, she said quietly, but the Giao Dirk I've received from watching all of you choose love over revenge has changed me. That kin thuk is worth more than freedom. As midnight approached on this third Christmas Eve since our ordeal began, Sarah stood to speak to the gathered crowd. 3 years ago, evil tried to destroy us, But the by Hawk we learned is that evil contains the seeds of its own destruction. It cannot create, only corrupt. It cannot build, only tear down. But love? Love builds across generations. My great-great-grandfather William protected us 50 years ago. My grandfather Thomas protected us even in death. My grandmother protected me when she had every reason to give up. That's real Yaoduk, learning that good multiplies while evil divides. Father O'Brien offered a blessing. The keen hook of suffering is that it teaches compassion. The by Hawk of betrayal is that it reveals true loyalty. The Yaoduk of loss is that it clarifies what truly matters. As our guests departed into the snowy night, each carrying a candle to light their way home, I stood with Sarah on our porch, the same porch where I'd once collapsed in despair. "We're not the same people we were 3 years ago," Sarah observed. "No," I agreed. "We're stronger, wiser, more aware of both evil and good." That's the hardest Yaoduk, learning that both exist, sometimes in the same person. The music box played its final notes of Silent Night as we prepared for bed. Tomorrow would be Christmas, a day of new beginnings built on the ashes of old endings. Dear viewers of Voices of Auntie Rose, this story of betrayal and redemption, a family destroyed and rebuilt, resonates with the tragic realities many face. How many of you have experienced family betrayal over money? How many have watched greed corrupt love? The by Hawk here is not just about elder abuse, but about the choices we make daily between kindness and cruelty, between building and destroying. Share in the comments your own experiences of family trials and triumphs. How has keen hook of human nature, both dark and light, shaped your life? What Yaoduk have you gained from suffering that became wisdom? Please subscribe to Voices of Auntie Rose for more stories that explore the depths of human nature and the heights of human resilience. Like this video if it touched your heart. Share it with those who need to hear that survival is possible, that justice exists, and that love does indeed leave evidence. Remember, the greatest by Hawk from Margaret and Sarah's story is this. Evil may be dramatic, but good is enduring. Cruelty may be loud, but kindness echoes across generations. The Yaoduk we pass on through love becomes the kin hook that saves future souls. To all watching this on your own difficult journey, may you find your own FBI agent Chen, your own Barbara, your own Helen. May you discover, as Margaret did, that sometimes the family we choose becomes stronger than the family we're born into. Wishing you all good health, peaceful days, and the wisdom to recognize love's evidence in your own lives. Thank you for joining us at Voices of Auntie Rose. Until we meet again in our next story, remember, you are stronger than you know, and your story matters. Goodbye for now, and see you in our next video.